I am finally back. Let's go ahead and do my usual setup again. It's annoying. That shit happens sometimes. My computer will just freeze up. It hasn't happened during a stream or recording before. Gotta repost the link. I'll delete the other VOD after this stream. I just wanted to get back to it as soon as I could. And yes, it really does take that long to restart my computer. It's kind of a piece of shit. Well, not just restart it, but for everything to load up again properly. I'll just wait to see people are here. So yeah, if you're watching the VODs of these, I mean, you probably gathered from context, but computer froze up, so had to restart. Basic, like, summary of last time is just, you know, we met another very bad end at the hands of a natural disaster. It's unclear whether or not we'll be able to avert such a fate, but we'll have to see what's in store for us for this chapter. That's basically what I was covering. This is the final question arc of Higurashi. Following this is Higurashi Kai, which has the answer arcs. Question arcs are the ones that establish the mystery in the story, and the answer arcs will slowly reveal what's going on. And sort of explore that mystery to its conclusion. Whatever that may be. Didn't I send a message in the chat that said I'll restart? I thought I did. Okay, so I'll read this again. Himatsubushi, for you the final mystery, time-killing chapter. I now entrust you with all the mysteries hidden within Higurashi when they cry. However comical it may be, if you have reached any conjecture, then you have passed. This final novel is a meager reward for you. Conjecture is impossible. You have the right to reject this story. Very awkward translation. I think they're basically saying, like, it's good if you have, you know, a theory for what's going on. This is a smaller chapter that's just been added, that it's not super important to the mystery. I think it does give some important information, personally. And then you have the right to reject the story is, I think, saying you can skip it if you want, but I would not recommend that. So let's start. So yeah, this arc includes choices that were added in the console version. You can potentially split off. I want to go for the pure original experience, so I'm going to skip stuff and only do the content from the PC version. Who is the criminal, you ask? Don't we search for them in this story? Who is the criminal, you ask? Do you even know what the criminal did? Who's the criminal? Who is the criminal who will kill me now? Midsummer, 1985. Shit. I had misread the time and ended up arriving too early. The schedule board flipped with a series of clacks. My flight to Sapporo was still a bit later on. I still had over an hour before boarding. Well, I might as well close my eyes a bit on that bench over there, then. I came here directly from work, so maybe the fatigue from that was making me sleepy. Finding a suitable bench, I put my luggage on the seat next to me and settled down. I sighed like an old man. I had hoped to stay young forever, but had become splendidly middle-aged. Apparently, the rumor that even people in the latter half of their 20s experience a decline in their physical strength wasn't a lie. It had been mind-numbingly busy at work lately, so I rarely had any time to myself. This might have been the first time I'd been able to enjoy a journey alone like this since I was a student. The reason behind this trip was to meet with an old friend. It was a bit strange to call him an old friend. In fact, it might be better to call him a bad one. After retiring a couple years ago, he moved to Sapporo, his mother's hometown. His mother passed away soon after, and he was now peacefully enjoying his second lease on life. His name was Kurao do Oishi. He was a former detective from the Primary Investigation Unit at the station in Okinomiya, Gifu Prefecture. To be honest, the only direct contact we ever had didn't last more than 3 days. After that, we exchanged New Year's cards, but never met again. So, this would be the first time meeting him in 7 years. In other words, we met 7 years ago, in 1978. There was something I just had to ask, to talk to him about concerning that time. To explain that, it was impossible not to recall the incident that happened back then. By the way, Sapporo is in Hokkaido, which is the northernmost island of Japan. Sapporo specifically is what Jubilee City was based on. Anyway, in Pokemon Gen 4 Sinnoh. That kidnapping, the details and resolution of which were resigned to darkness. Also, it was impossible not to recall a certain mysterious girl. My name is Mamoru Akasaka. It was a year that had been strangely hot, even though it was only June. Early summer, 1978. Goodbye, teacher! Okay, bye. Watch out for cars. And don't drop in at a friend's house along the way. Make sure you get your textbooks in order for tomorrow before you go to bed. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The lively sounds of children running towards the hallway. Hey now, didn't I tell you before? I already have one of those. I don't need any more. The unique, high-pitched voice of youth. The energetic shrill of the cicadas went completely unheard by their ears. Children, returning home from school, split off one by one from their groups of friends as they went through intersections in the residential area. Even though there were several of them in a group as they left the school, as they got closer to their homes, their numbers dwindled. That's why the fewer friends you were walking home with acted as an indicator that you were that much closer to your destination. Later! See ya! Yeah, see you tomorrow! He finally parted ways with his last friend. A van was parked at a bend in the road. The window was open, the sound of the radio leaking outside. It must have been the news or something. For that reason, the 3 of them were arrested for traffic violations and obstruction of justice. Due to the protests against the Hinamizawa Dam project resulting in bloodshed when clashing with riot police last month, things have only become more violent. The police are therefore taking precautions against radical activists causing yet another incident. Last week, there was also a direct confrontation with Minister Inukai on the steps of the Ministry of Construction. The boy's ears perked up at the mention of the name Inukai. At that moment, a man's face peeked out suddenly from the window of the van. His behavior was a little different than that of a man looking around to see if there was any incoming traffic before he opened the door of his vehicle. His eyes meeting suddenly with the unfamiliar man. The boy panicked slightly. Nightingale, okay. Skylark, okay. They've secured the 2 blocks around us. We're good to go. The man in the passenger seat whispered quietly. Nodding in acknowledgement, the man opened the door and stood before the boy. You. Are you Toshiki Inukai-kun? While asking that, the man peered at the boy's name tag. Toshiki Inukai. The name was written plainly there. The phone rang for a 3rd time. If he reached out, he could easily pick up the receiver. However, he was concerned that if he picked it up before it had even finished ringing once, whoever was on the other end of the line would think him a fairly cheap person. That's why he normally never picked up the phone until the 3rd ring. Even he thought it was a worthless habit. However, his thinking that there isn't much meaning in waiting for just 3 rings, wouldn't waiting for 5 be alright, was very much a reality. His mind filled with such trifling thoughts, He picked up the phone after the third ring had finished, its reverb dampened by his action.
Hi.
Yes.
もしもし。
Hello?
もしもし。
Hello? He knew that sometimes due to a malfunction at the switchboard, calls didn't connect well. At those times, it was best to hang up and let the person on the other end call again. Thinking that, the moment he began to hang up the phone, he sensed that he was definitely connected after all. He felt the presence of the person on the other end of the line, keeping silent.
もしもし。
Hello? There was no way they didn't hear his question. What was the meaning of this? It wasn't like he didn't know that people could use silent calls to harass others. However, he'd never received a call like that until today. Maybe he was just lucky before, but he didn't believe that he would receive such a call on this phone. There were no direct calls to or from this line. Everything had to go through an operator. Therefore, there was absolutely no way the call would be connected, unless it was verified there was somebody else on the other end of the line. That's why he didn't understand how to deal with this silent call, and instead settled into confusion.
あんた、
I don't know
誰だ
who you
か知ら
are,
ないが、
but if you have nothing to say,
用
I'm going
が
to
ない
hang
な
up.
ら切るよ。また、
Please call
かけ
again
直して
some
く
other
ださい。
time. Intending that to be a parting line, he made to slam down the receiver. It was at that moment the person on the other end spoke for the first time.
You didn't say who you were, so I was anxious. If you're not Minister Inukai, please hang up right away.
He couldn't help but be surprised by the extremely strange voice on the other end of the line. Was there a human alive who could speak with this hoarse and metallic voice? No, this was a voice he had heard somewhere before. That was the kind of voice that was on those lowbrow documentaries that they'd use when they wanted to hide the identity of a speaker, wasn't it? The voice he was hearing over the line was exactly like
あん
that.
た、
Who
誰？
are you?
As I said, that's what I want to ask. Are you Minister Inukai?
Inukai, hesitated to answer. Unable to discern the intent of this suspicious phone call, he had a vague feeling that something was off. He thought about hanging up the phone and asking the operator who initiated the call. However, he forced himself to restrain that urge, and for the time being chose to state his name and listen.
そうです。
That's right.
犬飼
This is Inukai.
名乗りまし
I
た。
said my name, now you say yours.
だから、
My name doesn't matter. First of all, let's begin by thinking about the situation you're in right now. Right now, you're sitting in your chair talking on the phone, yes? Then, why don't you try opening the lower drawer to your right?
The lowest drawer to the right of the minister's chair. There was a lock on it, not enough to function as a safe, but nevertheless it was a drawer that contained some valuable things. That's why Inukai thought that the person wanted some of the important information contained within that drawer.
すまんが。
Yeah,
開けるつもりはない
the text is kind of spoiling it a little here. To be fair, it's kind of obvious. They mentioned a kidnapping case, and then the kid was, like, speaking to a mysterious person, so... in a van. Sorry, but I don't have any intention of opening that.
自分の
I
名
have
前
no
を
reason to
名乗
follow
れる
orders
や
from
つ
somebody who won't even give
言
me
いな
his
りに
name.
なる言われはない。
If you don't open that drawer, I'll hang up the phone. You will most likely end up regretting that. Why don't you think about opening that drawer first?
Inukai didn't like following orders from this suspicious person one bit. However, he was concerned about what the man said about regretting it, so he decided to open the drawer. He took the small key he kept stowed in his wallet and unlocked the drawer. His hand stopped right before he opened it. What if there was a bomb inside, and it would explode if the drawer was opened? That delusion took hold of him. He quelled that instinct and opened it.
Did you do it? The thing that's in there. Do you know what it is?
これは
This is...
どういう
What is the meaning of this?
おい、
Hey!
I don't think there's any need for me to explain, is there? I'll give you some time, so please think about it a little. I'll contact you again later. Now then, pardon me.
おい、
Hey!
待て。
Wait!
もしもし。
Hello?
もしもし。
Hello? The call had already ended. That would not change no matter how much he yelled at it. Even still, Inukai, without realizing that, continued yelling into the receiver for a while. The drawer was still open. Drawer, whatever. I don't know how do Americans say it? In my accent, I would say drawer. I don't know if they'd say drawer or if it'd be like drawer or what. On top of the folders crammed into the drawer, it lay there. Toshiki Inukai, written in plain lettering on a grade schooler's name tag, just lying there, enshrined there, completely out of place, as if it were cowering. This is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons or organizations is entirely coincidental. Higurashi, when they cry. Oop, intro. This will probably get claimed. That's okay. I thought you were German, Daisy. Most of those people for the past few seconds there were from the console arcs. Still showing us console arc characters. Yeah, we won't be seeing these people during the main story. Well, but I mean, wouldn't you have a German accent, not an American one? I was curious how Americans would say it, because I'm trying to do American accents for the characters. Do you remember, Yukie? This picture. This is where I first proposed to you. That brief moment before you nodded back, you probably wouldn't know just how much it seemed like an eternity to me. Yes, I would have never thought that amount of time could feel like an eternity. Compared to how long I had to wait for you to propose to me, it was... From the moment I met you until today. Compared to the time I've spent since I was born, it might only be a brief period, but they were definitely precious, beautiful days that deserved to be called an eternity. I got it? Okay. Apparently the way I say it is how they say it in Philly. I know that there's certain regional accents that have aspects of them that are similar to accents across the pond in some ways, sometimes, which is interesting. Anyway, hello, I How Evil. That time continues even now. From now on, I wonder if it'll be a boy, or maybe a girl. Either one is fine. Boy or girl, either way it's living proof that we love each other. If it's a boy, we'll name it after you, Mamoru. If it's a girl, we'll put the Yuki from my name in hers. Thinking about names is so fun that in the end we still haven't decided yet. Oh, Jesus Christ. I don't know why, but I just threw up a little in my mouth. Just a tiny amount. That was random. Well, maybe it was like an acid reflux or something. I don't think it was. I don't know. God damn, last time I was in the Scooby-Doo stream, I was getting, like, the weird, like, sensitive gums or whatever. Now I'm getting acid reflux. Next time my fucking nose is gonna bleed. Anyway, there's still time to puzzle over it. I don't know who's talking here, I'm sorry. Not that long of a time, actually. You see, Yukie, there's something I have to apologize for today. It's about your job. Sorry. It looks like an annoying bit of work has come up. In the worst case, I might not be able to be there for the delivery. It's fine. You have a very important job. What you do protects the way we live. Compared to you, it's nothing. Please, go ahead. When you return, I'll be waiting here with our child. Thank you. Also, I'm sorry. What the hell was that? My screen light flashed. Also, I'm sorry. Please don't apologize. If you feel guilty about it, then you can just atone. If I atone that much, no matter how much money I have, it won't be enough. It's a joke. Now, go on. As I left the room, I bumped into an elderly man. It was Yukie's father. In other words, my father-in-law. Father, I didn't want to intrude, so I waited in the hall. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard. Go. Yukie is that kind of girl. No matter what happens, she doesn't want to hold you back. I've forced Yukie to give up on so many things. To put her through this during childbirth, such an important time in her life. I'm ashamed. If you really feel that way, when you're done with your work, make some time for Yukie. She'll be happier with that than you passing your work off on someone else. Thank you. I know full well you do important work. Be proud in what you do. Yukie is looking forward to a triumphant return. Yes. I jumped into the taxi that was waiting outside. Compared to the time when I first got here, the numbers on the fare meter had grown considerably. It seemed the modest time Yukie and I had spent together wasn't so modest from an objective point of view. Sorry to keep you waiting. Go ahead. No worries. Well then, off we go. The taxi jerked as it changed gears to accelerate, soon bearing the hospital my wife was in behind a throng of buildings. If it was to end up as a really troublesome ordeal, I probably wouldn't be returning for quite some time. To call a rookie like me, and on top of that one who's off duty, it seemed that the section chief was calling for all hands on deck. The veteran upper brass gathering on an emergency basis happened occasionally. This is the first time, though, that I experienced everybody gathering together like this. Whatever was happening, there was no doubt it was going to be something novel. Right when my wife was ready to give birth. If I wanted to spend the time to curse my misfortunes, I'd be here all day. Even the verdant ginkgo trees lining the streets that always brightened my mood seemed to lack some of their usual luster. Eventually, the government office came into view. Briefly holding my breath, I let the feelings of tension course through my body once again. I had to remember the work I was doing was important, necessary. Fucking hell, why did I say that? Necessary and difficult. I composed myself and sharpened my wit. Ready. The taxi stopped in front of the building. Kasumigaseki, Tokyo, Metropolitan Police Department Public Safety Division. Chief, everyone's here. Akasaka-kun, could you close the blinds? The blinds were usually closed when they needed to use the projector, or if the discussion was going to contain some particularly disturbing content. The blinds closed with a satisfying sound, darkening the interior of the room. Immediately, the inside of the room was completely drained of the pleasant morning atmosphere, leaving behind only the cold illumination of the fluorescent lighting. After the supervisor ensured that everyone was present, he nodded to the section chief once again. With everybody on the edge of their seats, the chief stood up solemnly and began to give his report. Approximately 48 hours ago, the Minister of Construction's grandson, who is also the son of one of his staff leaders, is believed to have been kidnapped. It is believed the minister, in an effort to resolve matters amicably, chose not to report the situation to the police, and plans to cede the demands imposed upon him. accede to the demands imposed upon him. It seemed that approximately 48 hours earlier, the Minister of Construction's grandson, who was also the son of one of his senior staff members, was kidnapped. The reason why it was phrased that way was because the person in question didn't admit it had happened. Based on the results of surveillance conducted on the minister's residence, multiple suspicious phone calls from what is believed to be outside the city took place. The abducted child is said to be under treatment for some illness, but there's no trace of any hospital records or witnesses to such effect. Due to that and various other reasons, we believe without a doubt that a kidnapping has occurred. Here, they omitted the details that brought this incident to light. If you think about it a bit, that meant that before this incident happened, the minister's residence had been under surveillance already. I won't use the word spied upon. Of course, there wouldn't have been court approval for this, and it would have been very hard to explain to ordinary citizens. However, it was quite an effective method to catch wind of incidents like this before they got worse. I'd like for you to understand that dealing with these cases before they become a problem is a job of the Public Safety Division. Why is he just following their demands instead of reporting this to the police? The fact that a minister can't even trust the police. What is the world coming to? It seems the group of perpetrators demonstrated that they have quite a high level of surveillance on the minister themselves when they conducted the kidnappings. Enough to give the minister pause before calling the police. We'll find out right away if you call the cops, more or less. So it's possible there's a mole close to the minister. Several of the higher-ranking members who seem to have experience with this kind of thing let out deep sighs. The goals of the perpetrators, their demands, as well as this entire incident are as of yet unclear. But in any case, the possibility that this may grow to threaten national interest is extremely high. If their goal was to simply have their demands met for monetary gain, that would have been nice. However, if this was some politically motivated shakeup, things would get a lot more complicated. Since we're not receiving any cooperation from the victim, that means that we're not privy to any of the details of the threats or demands. Due to the fact we believe there may be a mole involved in this incident, this investigation is highly classified. Only the people in this room are to know of this. Furthermore, as this case is our utmost priority, we'll be placing a hold on everybody's normal duties. Understood? After that, the supervisor continued on, tactfully explaining our course of action. If this incident were to become public, it was possible that the minister's political life would be over. I'll spare you the explanation of how the rest of the dominoes would fall, but in the end, support in the Diet would decline, followed by a no-confidence vote and a snap election, and it might even expand communist influences. In other words, we wanted to handle this delicately. Kawasaki and Saiki, monitor communications from the minister and the child's residences 24/7. Find out what the minister is doing. Report anything that happens. The remaining members investigate whatever is related to the case as assigned to your units. Focus your line of investigation on the commies, Reds, and Confeds. I don't know what Confederates would mean in the context of 1978 Japan. Don't discount the possibility of foreign involvement either. I've experienced one or two unamicable situations before. This, however, was the first time I've seen things get so hectic. Several sophisticated conversations were progressing without the involvement of a rookie like me. I didn't intend to be timid, but I couldn't hide my confusion at this unfamiliar situation. Uncover that! As for Akasaka-kun... I snapped back to alertness upon hearing my name called. Yes. You investigate the environmental groups that have petitioned the minister. Among them, there's that group protesting the Hinamizawa Dam project that made the papers. Make sure you investigate them thoroughly. I doubt this is the act of some citizen group, but we have to eliminate every possibility we can. Understood. So those opposed to the Hinamizawa Dam. It's probably best if you go to the location personally. Get some information from the local authorities. They're a fairly radical organization, so the Public Safety Division there should have them marked as well. Understood. I'll head over there. Your wife, she's almost ready to give birth, isn't she? I apologize for the timing of all this, but I'm counting on your cooperation. We can't take our time with this, we just have to brute force it with our boots to the ground. Yeah, I know. My wife hates to interfere with my work with her own circumstances anyways. Sorry, and thanks. So then, as for Kawasaki-kun and Saiki-kun to help support you, I didn't want to take a business trip when my wife was about to give birth. Even if I was a little busy, as long as I was in Tokyo, I could head to the hospital right away. On assignment, though, that would be difficult. Even so, I knew the work I was doing was important, and fully understood that I was in no position to be so selfish. I'd have to make it up to my wife for having to be away at such an important time. My wife, Yukie, would probably forgive me with a smile. The only thing she could hate doing would be holding me back. My male ego, though, at least wished she would have tried to stop me. Sorry, Yukie. I don't mind if you always complain to our child that their father couldn't come to the hospital when they were born because he was too busy with work. Wasn't it mentioned who kidnapped the kid in an earlier chapter? I believe it was mentioned that there was rumors of the anti-dam movement having kidnapped the kid, so this is basically that playing out. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's not the biggest spoiler, even if they didn't. Like, we're following the perspective of the character who's going to investigate them, so it's probably them. The next day, I took the bullet train to Nagoya, and from there transferred to the train to Gifu Prefecture. Getting to my destination by land took several hours. If I was traveling by air, in that amount of time I could probably get as far as Hong Kong. Gifu Prefecture was by no means close. Pardon me, Jesus Christ. I never sat in first class except for work, but whenever I did, the seat seemed stiff. Closing my eyes, I mentally reviewed the documents I read yesterday. The group under investigation, the Onigafuchi Guardians. They were a group of residents opposed to the development proposed under the Hinamizawa Dam project. The local protests were quite heated and were getting more radicalized. Even limited to what was written in the newspapers, there was bloodshed that occurred during a clash with riot police, interference with the dam construction. Too many to count. The number of petitions, sit-ins, and direct appeals to the relevant organizations were innumerable. As an extension of that, there was a direct appeal to the Minister of Construction the other day. This was the reason why we were investigating this group in the first place. The land that they lived on was going to be submerged, so it was no wonder they were going to a frenzy over it. Even given that, though, could they really be capable of doing something like kidnapping the Minister of Construction's grandson in order to halt the project? From my take on it, I had serious doubts. This kidnapping plot was extremely sophisticated and complicated enough that it was believed that there was some political backing. This wasn't something that could be pulled off by some group of local protesters. Well, just like the chief said, the plan was to eliminate all possibilities. While I'm in the Gifu Prefect Police's reference room taking my time investigating, the higher-ups in Tokyo would probably solve the case. Without my involvement entirely. Even if that was true, I couldn't regret being away from Tokyo while my wife was ready to give birth. This was work. There was really nothing that I could do. Ding dong. The announcement that we would be arriving at our destination soon snapped me back to wakefulness. Gogura, Gifu Prefecture, Prefectural Public Safety Division. The Onigafuchi Guardians? Yeah, they've been quite active around here. The Prefectural Public Safety Department already had the documents and a cup of tea ready and waiting for me. The short of it is, they're a group of residents opposed to the dam. Really, it's probably better to say that every resident living on the land is going to be submerged as rising to action, though. Like the old saying, fight to the last. They're a determined and well-prepared lot. It'd be nice if they drew the line at just being a moderate residential organization. The stack of papers they had prepared for me in the document room was by no means thin. At first, they were pretty much your average citizens initiative, but ever since that incident with the riot police, they've really started to heat up. Now they've got a violent mentality, on top of growing increasingly radical. Violent organizations usually indicate ones that enforce their own ideology without regards to the democratic process. Breaking that down, many of those organizations held extreme left revolutionary ideologies. Considering that, I couldn't help but be surprised that a citizens group would end up going this far. Radical citizens movements happen occasionally. It seemed, however, that this group was nothing as trifling as that. It seemed that I would have to reconsider exactly what this Onigafuchi Guardians was. The Guardians' demands, in other words, the withdrawal of the dam project, how far would they go to have that demand met? kidnapping of the minister's grandson was classified. That meant, of course, I couldn't tell the Gifu Prefectural Department about it either. As you know, there were arrests after last week's confrontation with Minister Inukai. There's enough reason to believe they could use illegal means to assert their demands. I skimmed over the list of the criminal records related to the Onigafuchi Guardians recorded in the documents. The contents were all violent, not giving me the barest hint of a feeling that these people were trying to uphold the law. Could you give me a basic rundown of the types of illegal activities the Onigafuchi Guardians are engaging in? The chief opened up a manila envelope, fished out several unorganized sheets, and spread them out on the desk. It seems that raids on the construction site are the most common. At first, they were committing relatively petty crimes like cutting power cord, jamming locks, and breaking office windows by throwing rocks. Of course, what really happened first were things like demonstrations, sit-ins, and distribution of pamphlets, lively but democratic forms of protests. However, then the demonstrators and police clashed, which started a riot, leading to numerous injuries and arrests. It was from then on that the Onigafuchi Guardians, like their name implies, began to take a more demonic form of resistance. If the raids were frequent, didn't the local police up their patrols? Well, of course they were on full alert, but they were up against locals, you know? There wasn't much the police could do if they were sneaking around under the cover of darkness. You might as well label the entire map of Hinamizawa village around the dam construction site enemy territory. No matter how alert the police were, the locals would just show them exactly how easy it was to sneak around. Actually, it was after the police upped security that the protesters started getting ever more extreme, as though they were being provoked. See here? Can you tell how things started to heat up? An office set on fire. The destruction of heavy construction equipment. Destruction? They couldn't have used explosives. No way. You see, they crammed the gas tanks full of sugar cubes. If they do that, it fouls the engines. Even in Japan, it seemed there had been people doing that to the vehicles of occupying forces right after the war. Compared to misdemeanors like breaking windows, it was extremely violent and aggressive. After being toyed around with to that extent, the local police have completely lost face. The arson was a bit much. After that, the local police drastically increased the number of personnel they had stationed there around the clock. The raids on the construction site quieted down a bit after that. He used the words quieted down, but that was still smack dab in the middle of the list of crimes. See, after that, after they found that attacking the site had become difficult, they started resorting to personal attacks. The first people targeted were the construction workers. After that, there was silence. What was being described to me was a guerrilla war fought in the jungle. Threats and violence against the workers. Harsh words and harsher rocks were thrown. There's quite a list of accusations here, but there's not a whole lot of convictions. Of course not. First of all, there's no witnesses. On top of that, even if we identify the perpetrators, they have alibis coming out of the woodwork. What do you mean by that? Take, for example, you're walking around Hinamizawa when a certain man stabs you with a knife. You remember the person clearly, and even know his name and address. However, the knife doesn't have any fingerprints on it, and there's no other physical evidence. Well, you'd think this would be a run-of-the-mill case of assault, wouldn't you? In Hinamizawa, though, it's a perfect crime. Everybody is... the entire village. They're all in on it. To protect the Mad, who was the perpetrator, they'll get their story straight and prepare an alibi. To that end, they'll probably even forge some evidence. There's nothing they can do but put them on trial. On top of there not being any material evidence, though, people testify one after another to cover his side of the story. Any prosecutor would hesitate to file charges. I'm not sure about murder, but if it's something like opening a gash on somebody's forehead with a thrown rock, or leaving a bruise after hitting someone, even if you could single out the suspect, there's enough reasonable doubt to not convict. Every case is without a doubt perpetrated by someone in Hinamizawa, but they can't identify who. Even if they could figure out who it is, they're unable to obtain enough circumstantial evidence through due process. The villagers were all extremely well informed about this, and so the malicious, vicious, and tenacious personal attacks continued. The victims can't have been okay with that, right? And couldn't they have filed for an appeal? Well, you see, about that, everybody on the inquest committee didn't want to get involved with something so troublesome. They won't stick their noses into anything related to Hinamizawa. The inquest committee is comprised of a random selection of local residents. In the event the prosecutor fails to get a conviction, they have the power to order a retrial. It's a system designed to assert the will of the people on the actions of expert prosecutors in the legal world. In this case, however, being composed of local residents has backfired. They don't want to get involved? Why is that? How do I explain this? You could say they're afraid, since it's a little special there. Special? Is it an outcast community? No, it's a little different from that. Well, just think of it as them being afraid. It's a little hard to explain it just now. Oh, right, there's an easier way. Wiping his forehead with a handkerchief, he opened a file labeled as a list of members of the Onigafuchi Guardians. The power of the Onigafuchi Guardians, as you see, is the fact that they count many people among their members who are influential in neighboring areas. Could you take a look at this? I looked. What I saw startled me. Prefectural and municipal assembly members, staff members of the Chamber of Commerce, an executive of a business association, an executive of a town council association, and a PTA liaison. There are more than a few people with a lot of say, both locally and in the neighboring regions. Around here, you can pretty much expect your actions to be observed by those against the dam project. If you said something in its support, who knows how it'll work out to your disadvantage. In any case, every town in this area is being held at the throat by somebody from Hinamizawa. The list of Inquisition committee members is undisclosed, isn't it? There has to be some measures in place to make sure they avoid retribution, no? Well, it is undisclosed, so their privacy is assured, but the person in charge of that is from the Okinomiya Municipal Office. In other words, a local. While you might expect some professional confidentiality, you can't know how everybody is connected. The people from Hinamizawa have a lot of tight bonds in that regard. When you consider the obligations and duties people have to the region, the web of information thereby formed is nothing to scoff at. It's not uncommon for housewives in a neighborhood to know which kid from which house is what grade in which school, what subjects they're good at, and what vegetables they hate, among others. You see, there's a Yakuza organization here with strong ties to Hinamizawa and the surrounding area. It would seem that they're providing full support in these recent incidents. They seem to be proving most effective. Gangsters? Siding together with the residents opposed to the construction of the dam? It's a little hard to see what their common interest is. It's not that difficult at all. You see, actually, one of the lieutenants in that gang is originally from Hinamizawa. He was adopted into a rather influential family in the village. Exactly what was this Hinamizawa? I'd thought it was some desolate rustic village. However, for some reason, they exerted a strong influence on the surrounding areas, and had a strong sense of unity. They would protect their village by any means necessary, even if that meant resorting to violence. The chief had said that they were afraid because there were numerous influential people living there, but somehow I got the feeling that they were afraid of the village itself. Hello, Krita, I don't understand your comment. There was something clearly different from what I had read in the documents in Tokyo. This was no simple residential protest against the dam. For some reason, an uneasy feeling began to nestle itself at the back of my mind. I chose the most basic way to ask my question. In other words, I directly asked what I wanted to know. Chief, this is just a hypothetical situation, but... Huh? This Onigafuchi Guardians, in order to halt the dam project, do you think they could, say, threaten somebody important to accomplish that? The chief replied immediately. It's possible. Truth be told, they've already gone to municipal and prefectural offices, as well as local offices of the Ministry of Construction, and done things that could be construed as intimidation. Several of the workers' families have also reported that they're being followed around by some suspicious people. Well, that would make sense. To halt progress on the dam, they raided the construction site, destroying heavy machinery and lighting the construction office on fire. If they didn't have any qualms about doing that, threats and violence against people related to the dam would probably be no problem. But that was it. Even your everyday hoodlum could use threats and violence. Yeah, no, I still don't know what you mean. However, this time it was the kidnapping of the minister's grandson, an abnormally high-level crime. Not only was pulling off the kidnapping difficult in the first place, but so was maneuvering to have the minister surrender to their demands immediately. There was no way this was the work of amateurs. Did these people have the power to enact this large of a crime? That was the heart of the matter. Was the Onigafuchi Guardians an organization capable of pulling this off? In order to ask that question, once again, I chose the most basic method. Again, hypothetically, do you think they could kidnap a relative of someone of political importance? There's no way they could pull off something that big. That was the answer I most hoped for. If it was that answer, my work was as good as halfway done. Speaking of horse, I do have a real rust on my voice right now. I hate it. It always comes out when I'm streaming. If it was that answer, my work was as good as halfway done. I might be able to get back in time for my wife to give birth. That was how it was supposed to be. The chief, without a hint of hesitation, replied, "They just might. There's no telling how far they'd go." Sorry, Yukie. It seemed like my work wouldn't end so simply after all. Oh, Akazaka-kun. Good work. How's the information gathering at your assigned region? It's coming along. It seems I'll be able to meet with their local public safety department, so I'm planning on heading out that way. How's the investigation in Tokyo going? The others are progressing along, but the number of groups we have to investigate are countless. Time isn't really a luxury here. There were no new developments at this time. No matter how suspicious the Onigafuchi Guardians was, if they solved the case in Tokyo, my job was done. What? It looked like my wishful thinking wouldn't come to pass. Hanging up the phone, I let my gaze drift outside the window to the valley of unfamiliar buildings. Akazaka-san, a car you can borrow just returned. I'll take you to it, so follow me. Thank you. He showed me the elevator to the underground parking lot where a battered sedan was waiting for me. That the steering wheel kept drifting to the left was a little concerning, but it would be enough to get me around for a while. My destination was Shishibone City, Gifu Prefecture, an area under the control of the Onigafuchi Guardians. The Okinomiya police station was right on the front lines. Okinomiya, Gifu Prefecture. Okinomiya Police Station. They have playlists filled with videos about inflation. I see. I mean... whatever, I guess. I kind of figure they might just be trolling by putting garbage, nonsense messages in chat, but... I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. Shishibone City was, as far as provincial cities went, rather behind the times. Okinomiya, recessed in the mountains, was even more remote. With little change between the seasons, all that was left was the tepid passage of time. It made for a rather drab town. There were no tourist attractions or local delicacies. Without even a strong regional industry, it was simply dull. Just looking at the monotonous and peaceful townscape, it was hard to catch a glimpse of the radical resistance of the Onigafuchi Guardians. The atmosphere of boredom didn't hint of the Okinomiya police station being on the front lines of the dam conflict, nor of the numerous incidents that I heard about at the prefectural headquarters. Good morning. Are you here to pay a fine? No, I have an appointment with Hondaya-san from the Public Safety Division. Please tell him it's Akasaka. Ah, my apologies. Please wait a minute. The clerk, who thought that I was here for a parking violation at first glance, after fumbling with the unfamiliar extension number, told the person on the line they had a visitor. Welcome, welcome. Akasaka-san, was it? It must have been tiring traveling out here all this way. Sorry we have to do this here. I tried to reserve a reception room, you see. But the counselor suddenly woke up and chased me out. I would hesitate to call where we were a conference room, as it was very small and cluttered. The cramped space was packed with lockers. I had the impression that it was more of a change room that doubled as one for smoking. Listening to his crude chortles, I didn't get much of a feeling that Hondaya, who was head of the local public safety division, was much of an intellectual. But I knew that in exchange he had both experience and absolute confidence in his instincts. I apologize for interrupting you during such a busy time. I'm Akasaka from the Metropolitan Police Department. Pleased to make your acquaintance. Hondaya from the Public Safety Division. Nice to meet you. I was threatened by Sankai from the prefectural gangbusters to be generous with my cooperation. Gangbusters? You mean the prefectural crime prevention division? You see, we're treating the Onigafuchi Guardians as an extension of the local Yakuza. You'd have to be a newbie if you think they're just a residential protest group. They said that at the prefectural office, too, that the Onigafuchi Guardians was linked to the local mob. If I recall correctly, the adopted son of somebody influential was a lieutenant in that gang. It's the other way around. The complete opposite. The Yakuza put up the protest group as a front to justify their actions. Just think of it like that. Completely the other way around. Hondaya was just about rolling with laughter. This was slightly different than the info given to me at the prefectural office, but somebody embedded locally would be more knowledgeable. While we were talking, occasionally some people who seemed to be detectives would come in and change. One of those individuals, noticing Hondaya's guffaws, came up to us. I was wondering what you guys were talking about. Oh, Kura-chan! Perfect timing, why don't you join us? This here is Inspector Akasaka, who came all the way from the Tokyo Police Department. An inspector? I'm still a rookie. My name is Akasaka. Pleased to meet you. It must be nice to be so fresh-faced. Did they hire you this year? I couldn't help but think I was being ridiculed, so I only responded with a forced smile. I could tell that this new person was like Hondaya, the type who had confidence in their instincts and experience. I really didn't like those types of people. Let me introduce you, Akasaka-san. This is Oishi-kun from our investigative department. Regarding the S-file you're asking about, he's familiar with it. S-file? S for Sonozaki. If something is an S-file, it means it has something to do with the Sonozaki family. It's something of a code name. Sonozaki. Kind of think of it, I remembered where I was poring over the documents at headquarters. There were quite a few people with the last name Sonozaki popping up. If I remember right, there's a Sonozaki who was one of the executives of the Onigafuchi Guardians. I'm pretty sure they're the treasurer. The two of them were surprised when I rattled off what post the Sonozaki held. After a moment, both of them erupted into laughter. Akasaka-san, was it? You're quite the studious one. Could it be you've memorized all of the central figures in the Alliance? I wouldn't say memorized exactly, but I've at least read the list of Onigafuchi Guardians executives. Then, who are the president and vice president? The president is the mayor of Hinamizawa, Kiichiro Kimiyoshi. The Sonozaki is a sussy baka, god. The vice president is the priest of the local shrine, Furude. The treasurer is Orio Sonozaki. The auditor is Makino. The liaison is Yoshiroshi Kimiyoshi. That's funny. The PR head is Sadao Sonozaki. Akasaka-san, you're pretty good. The pay sucks, but if you want to work here? You're just the type we're looking for. By the way, Sadao Sonozaki is head of the youth department. So close! The head of public relations is actually Tadataka Sonozaki. Tadataka Sonozaki. Feeling like I wasn't being complimented at all, I started settling into an uncomfortable mood. However, I was becoming more and more aware that I was the weakest link in this investigation, so I just had to bear with it. I didn't mean for that feeling to show up on my face, but the crafty detectives didn't let that slip by. No! I didn't mean to make fun of you. To make up for it, why don't I show you around the village? For somebody with no feel for the area like me, it would be a great help. I couldn't have asked for more. In the end, the Onigafuchi Guardians is nothing more than an alias Hinamizawa is using to deal with the outside world. I think getting to know the village would speed up your work. How about it? The residential movement, in other words, held influence over the whole region. So the leader of the movement was the leader of that influence. Just like that, the thought processes in the region would become the overall personality of the movement. Just like Oishi had said, in order to learn what they were really like, this regional force behind the dam protests, getting to know the village was the quickest way. If you would. Nodding back without skipping a beat, Oishi laughed in satisfaction and stood up. If I took the information I learned at the prefectural office and from Handaya to heart, if my position was exposed, my personal safety was at risk. The opponent was an extremist group that had no qualms about using threats or violence against somebody. If my personal info was leaked, it wouldn't be hard to imagine that I'd be in danger, whether on the job or not. Thinking that, I felt a little nervous. These guys are quick to remember faces. If you're seen with me, they'll probably do a lot to hinder your work. This might be a little cliché, but put these on. Oishi handed me an incredibly suspicious disguise comprised of a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a mask. I didn't want to get all hot and stuffy, but Oishi's warning was probably right on the money. Considering that, I put them on with appreciation. It looked so suspicious that Oishi had to smile wryly. How much did I tell you again? Let's see. To the part where you were talking about how these three ancient families control the village. The Onigafuchi Guardians was the same as the village of Hinamizawa itself, meaning there was a direct correlation between being an executive in the alliance and being a leader in the village, as Hondaya had told me a short time ago. If the village was ruled by three ancient families, then it would mean the Onigafuchi Guardians was ruled by those same three families. Okay. What did the documents at the prefectural office say? About the leaders of the Guardians or whatnot? The documents I was using were classified. If I responded to Oishi's question, it'd be a breach of security. However, most likely, this man, I judged, was more well-versed in the situation than any of the documents at the prefectural police department, so I decided to answer him. That the president of the alliance is the current mayor of the village, Kiichiro Kimiyoshi. Oishi, upon hearing that, let out a small chuckle. For him to ask like that and to laugh at the answer as it was recorded in the documents meant that wasn't the case in reality. So then, that means there's somebody else other than Kimiyoshi behind the scenes. Contrary to what the prefectural office thinks, or rather what is commonly known. Old man Kimiyoshi is nothing more than a figurehead. In the first place, the post of mayor in that village is nothing more than ceremonial. In other words, there's someone else in charge of both the alliance and the village. Would that be the three families we just talked about? Well, I'll explain that part right now. All of a sudden, with a thunk, the car suddenly lurched. The paved road had given way to a gravel one. At the same time, the scenery outside the window changed. The Hinamizawa Dam project must be withdrawn. Overthrow the shameless puppet of a governor. The dam will submerge the natural beauty of Hinamizawa. Protect the village from the unethical dam. Fear the wrath of Oyashiro-sama's curse. Demolish the dam. Those involved must go away. The construction office must respond. The construction office manager must negotiate with us. Signs and banners crowded the roadside. Even reading the brush-scrawled words was daunting. It was as though where the road just changed was the border with a different country. At that moment, I was startled by the car suddenly braking. Looking ahead, a barricade had been erected. About 5 or 6 protesters, wearing masks and helmets to hide their faces, were blocking the road, yelling at us angrily to stop. What is this? A checkpoint? Huh? These guys never learn. Oishi snorted as he rolled down the window and leaned out. Hey, you guys, you can't be blocking the road like this here. As Oishi glared at them with a malicious laugh, they visibly faltered. Clear the way. We can't get by like this. Who would have thought it was Oishi's car? That panicked thought seemed to make them lose their presence of mind. If you had known it was your car, Detective Oishi, we wouldn't have been so rude. Detective, what happened to your usual car? Is it in for maintenance? Something like that. I just can't get used to this car they loaned me. Judging from their brief conversation, I could guess that they were familiar with the license plate of the car Oishi normally used. In other words, if they knew the car belonged to the police, they would have hidden the barricade. What they were doing was obviously obstruction of traffic, a blatant crime. Who's that suspicious guy? You! Could you show us your face? The man glared at me menacingly. Wearing a mask and sunglasses made me look particularly dubious. Would not showing my face get me into some unnecessary trouble? I turned to Oishi to see what I should do. Give him a break. He's still a shy little rookie. We just wanted to make sure he wasn't anybody suspicious. Hinamizawa has been in a bit of a stir as of late. Have you looked at yourself in the mirror? That mask you're wearing is way more suspicious. The men and Oishi continued to talk like that, feigning smiles at one another. However, from the beginning to the end, I couldn't get over the feeling I was sitting on a powder keg. Has the number of trucks illegally dumping still not decreased? It's a real hassle dealing with it all the time. If the police could understand and cooperate, it would really help. During that conversation, the barricade was moved, leaving a gap wide enough for a single car to get through. Oishi lightly honked the horn once and began to roll the car forward. I could see the men's antagonistic glares at the back of the car in the rearview mirror. What was that just now? Blocking a public road like that? Of course it's a crime. Still, if you get worked up over that, it'll never end. Those guys, see, claim there's an infestation of trucks illegally dumping in the village. Their story goes that in order to stop that, they're halting suspicious vehicles for inspection. Illegal dumping? Like corrupt contractors just tossing industrial waste away? Their line of argument is that if the police aren't going to do anything about it, they'll take matters into their own hands. Well, the industrial waste is just something they're doing by themselves anyway. By themselves? They have a pretty good strategy. You see, in order to hinder construction, they've spread industrial waste over by the dam site. Then, blaming it on corrupt contractors, they start instituting these inspections. There, they stop every construction vehicle coming through and interfere with them as much as possible. So then, it's one of the methods the Onigafuchi Guardians is using. With that inspection just now, this car's license plate has probably been recorded. It shouldn't get stopped from here on out. Those guys know very well not to get me angry. See, rumor is that if they figure a car is related to the construction in some way, not only would there be checkpoints stopping it at every turn, but there'd be throwing rocks and planting road spikes as well. It's best you be careful so you're not identified. If they find out you're from public safety, who knows what you'll suffer through. Oishi was acting like we were talking about something fun, but for me it was no laughing matter. It almost feels like we've wandered into a civil war in the Middle East. That's a good way of putting it. It's pretty much just what you said. Oishi turned to me with a grin and menacing laugh. You see, this here is a war zone. The car slowed down a bit as I went down a narrow road through some farmland. You see that house in that forest over there? That antiquated one. Looking at where Oishi was pointing, there certainly was an old, traditionally designed house. That belongs to the mayor, old man Kimiyoshi. You could say it belongs to the main Kimiyoshi house as well. There's a lot of branches, but they'd be one of the three families. The three families. The ancient families that control Hinamizawa? That's right. And one of the others is the Furude family. Their house doesn't even have a single branch, as all that's left is the head priest's family. Right over there, there's the shrine. He's the priest there. By the way, the Guardian's office is on the grounds of that shrine. The office of the Onigafuchi Guardians. If these guys were the enemy, that would make their shrine their stronghold. Can we go look over there? The shrine is the Furude family's private property, you see. Being police, we can't set foot there without a warrant. See, they've got a member of the Diet with ties to the village backing them up. Basically, being the police has its strengths and weaknesses. I thought that Azika said it was a public place. The exterior of it. Well, even when we talk about the three families, that's something from a long time ago. Way back when, those three families used to hold councils to decide things about the village. Meaning, it's different now? You've got a pretty good nose. That's what I expect from an academic. The car braked to a halt with a squeal. Ahead of where we were stopped were several signs. Private property beyond. No trespassing. Beware of poisonous snakes. Danger. Turn back. Intruders will be charged an entry fee of 1 million yen. Signs were erected there with things like that written on them. The road was separated from the forest by a chain-link fence wrapped in barbed wire. Since this is private property, this is as far as we go. There's several surveillance cameras set up further in. Saying that we just got lost won't work with these guys. They're beyond here, right? The people currently controlling Hinamizawa and the Onigafuchi Guardians were neither the Kimiyoshi family nor the Furude family, but the last of the three. Yeah, beyond here is one of the three families, the Sonozaki family. They're the ones controlling Hinamizawa from the shadows. Among the list of executives recorded in the documents, the number of people with last names from the three families was quite high. Of course, Sonozaki was no exception. However, at the top was the Kimiyoshi family. If the Kimiyoshi family seemed to be in charge, the rulers behind the scenes were the Sonozaki family. This double-layered structure implicitly told me that this village had both a light and a dark side. The current head of the Sonozaki family is an old lady named Oryo. She has enough clout that you could call her Empress Sonozaki. Be careful, she is no small fry. She's enough of a VIP that even the mayor of the city has to bow before her. Well, in Hinamizawa and the surrounding area, their relatives amount to a block of several thousand votes. No politician could show disrespect for that. In other words, that would make her the actual leader of the Onigafuchi Guardians, right? You've got it. With those words, Oishi pulled out a well-worn cigarette box. The suspected kidnapping of the minister's grandchild and subsequent threats. Were these part of the hidden plot by the Onigafuchi Guardians in order to have the Hinamizawa Dam project cancelled? You came all the way from Tokyo to investigate this, didn't you? Huh? Yeah. That's right. Something the matter? Then... is it related to that direct appeal incident with Minister Inukai? If that's the case, then public safety has them marked on a watch list? Something like that? Having you guess that so quickly makes this easy. While exhaling out cigarette smoke, Oishi smiled broadly, like I'd just pulled a good one on him. Or so I thought. His smile disappeared suddenly. That's a lie, isn't it? Huh? I mean, the direct appeal putting them on a watch list. That's a lie, isn't it? Oishi knew there was no way that Tokyo HQ would dispatch an investigator over something as minor as a direct appeal. If they were to dispatch someone, it had to be for a more dire reason. He'd figured out as much. I thought of myself as the type of person who doesn't let things show on their face. In front of his watchful gaze, however, I felt that what I was thinking was completely laid bare. Oishi silently lit another cigarette, as if waiting for me to interject during this awkward pause. I see. So this was a veteran detective's way of getting someone to spill information. But as long as I realized this, there would be nothing more. If I didn't open my mouth, I wouldn't have to lose anything. All I had to do was stare out the window and enjoy the scenery until Oishi gave up. You really are bad at hiding things, you know. Being so young and earnest isn't so bad. Oishi smirked as he twisted out his third cigarette, while I tried not to let him notice that I had yielded completely. At first I thought I'd won, or at the very least Oishi had ascertained that I was hiding something, meaning that I might have ended up marching to his tune. Oishi had started up the engine once again and began to move the car. It's this fucking soda that's doing it. Making my voice hoarse. If you'd just been honest with me, I thought I might have been able to help you. How would you help? If the cat was out of the bag, I might as well use it to catch some mice. Well, this depends on what we're talking about, but I might be able to set you up with someone who's knowledgeable about the goings-on in Hinamizawa. An informant? I see, is that what you call it? Why are you interested in my case, Oishi-san? Well, I'm the same as you. Isn't it our business to know things? Being able to meet with Oishi's informant was an extremely compelling opportunity. We were looking to recruit somebody familiar with the area to collaborate with for intelligence. In the end, there was no better method for finding people than asking. We were always taught, however, that the rank-and-file police were no better than monkeys. Unlike us, they were careless with confidential cases. We looked down on them like they'd run their mouth in a drunken stupor. Oishi was an outlaw even amongst them, and here I was, lost on whether or not I should tell him about the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. This informant, exactly how knowledgeable are they about the Onigafuchi Guardians? If you're from public safety, you'd know, wouldn't you? Something like that is something I can't just tell you. Protect your sources. That was the first principle of dealing with confidential information. In that regard, it seemed that Oishi wasn't one of those monkeys. Should I trust him, ask for his help, or not? It's just that you work for the feds, and I work for the prefecture. I don't think that our jobs are that different. I think I can be of help. However, I had trouble believing that this crafty old man would simply help me just like he claimed. Now, how should I go about this? I find it hard to believe that someone of your standing would help me out without strings attached. Well, it's not like I'm completely without an ulterior motive. As I recall, you guys have space in your budget allocated to pay informants, right? Something you don't need to submit a receipt for. Just a little bit of that would be the cost of meeting with the informant. In other words, give the compensation earmarked for the informant to you first. Well, it helps that the details of this deal are so clear-cut. He certainly was something else for being able to brazenly state his ulterior motive like this. Rather than him doing this out of the kindness of his heart, everything was a lot clearer if he was being compensated for this deal. I felt that he was the type of man who was good at these backroom dealings. Don't misunderstand me, please. It's not me who needs the money, it's the informant, okay? Well, in regards to the payment, I'll be handling the money. When do you want it? Right now would be good. If you don't have it on you, tomorrow works as well. I pulled out a wallet that was different from my personal one. The price was pretty much fixed depending on what kind of information I was paying for. In this case, the payment was up front. Also, considering the fact that I didn't know what kind of info I would get, I shouldn't pay too much. When I suggested that, Oishi suddenly stretched out his hand and tightly grasped the contents of the wallet. At times like this, it's best you not be so stingy. It's alright, it won't go to waste. I understand. I won't be stingy. And? What kind of information are you looking for? Depending on what you want, how we approach this will probably change. You swear you won't spread this information to anybody else, Oishi-san? I can't swear as much. I'm the same as you. I can't withhold information obtained during the course of my duties. I got it, I swear. Nothing here gets said anywhere else. On top of that, and thanks to you, I can pay back what I owe from my mahjong debts. In any case, I won't break a promise that involves money. I was still unsure if I should trust him until the very last moment, but in the end I broke down. Oishi wasn't the type of guy I could trust 100%, but there was no mistaking he had access to underground information networks. In order to accomplish my mission swiftly, I needed his cooperation. I set my resolve. I'm investigating whether or not the Onigafuchi Guardians is related to a certain incident. Certain incident? There's a possibility that the Minister of Construction, Inukai, is being coerced by someone. Saying there's a possibility is kind of a roundabout way of putting it.
大臣の近辺に
It appears there's a
内
mole
通者がい
close
る
to
ら
the
しい
minister,
その内通者
and
に
due
よ
to
って
that mole, the minister had been monitored quite thoroughly, and was seemingly forced to see to their threats right
して
away.
いる様子です。警察へも我々へも
What's iconic?
一切通報してい
None
ま
of
せん
this was reported to us or the police.
なるほど。
I see.
だから
So that's why you're saying there's only a possibility he's being coerced. In that case, isn't it a little strange? If the minister didn't report this to anybody, how did you guys know about this incident? Get money for information to pay martial debts, yeah. If we didn't spy on the minister's private life, we would have never found
そ
out.
の説明は
I don't think we have to provide
私
that
が情報
explanation
屋
to
に
the
提供
informant,
す
so
る
I'm
必要が
omitting
ない
it.
と思われるので割愛
Oishi
しま
had
す
apparently caught on and quietly chuckled when I refused to explain.
なるほど。
I see.
大臣の
There's a
近
spy
辺に
close to the
スパイがいる
minister,
ら
so
しい
public safety made it a highly classified investigation.
そりゃ
That certainly isn't a very amicable story, is it?
ことを公にすれ
If
ば
this matter became public, not only would this affect the minister's political career, but the possibility of there being a shift in the political landscape is extremely high.
犯人グループの目
If the
的がそこ
perpetrator's
に
aim
ある
is indeed that, then this could develop into a very grave situation.
政府の劣等
Well, with the government having development projects all over the country, they've butted heads with quite a few people.
どんなささ
It
や
wouldn't
かな
take much
決心を
wrongdoing for the
一つ
left-wing parties to suddenly
野党
garner
勢
more
力が
support.
どっと票を伸ばす
大臣がど
We're
のような
currently
要求を
investigating
受
what
けている
demands are being forced on the minister.
ですが
But at least we have a good idea of how he's being threatened.
なんです。
How?
大臣の孫
The
の
minister's grandson was kidnapped.
周辺は否
They're
定してい
denying
ます
it,
が
but judging from when he was last
最後
seen,
の目撃
it's
から
believed it's already been over 72 hours since the
誘拐後
kidnapping.
72時間が経
3日
So
です。
3 days.
波の
If they were just after ransom money, this would have been settled by now.
金銭でなく
And maybe this isn't for monetary gain. The possibility that they're forcing the minister to do something politically is extremely high.
それを我々は
That's something we can't can't consent to.
で
So then the Onigafuji Guardians was listed as one of the possible perpetrators.
そうです
That is correct. Kidnap the minister's grandson and demand the cancellation of the dam project.
うん
どうでしょう
What do you think, Oishi-san?
その可能性
From
は
your point of view, do you think that's possible?
あり得ると思いますか
Oishi seemed to ponder the idea for a while. The section chief at the regional office had responded immediately with, "It's possible." However, Oishi, who was this well informed about the matter, was hemming and hawing. Finally, just a little bit, he said something that was really just a little bit strange.
明治前までは
This was before the Meiji era, you see. This area wasn't named Hinamizawa Village back then. It was called Onigafuchi. This is just what I heard from my mother. This topic was so completely and suddenly unrelated to the subject of the kidnapping of the minister's grandson that I was taken slightly aback.
鬼ヶ淵
Onigafuchi? Oh, so that's why they're called the Onigafuchi Guardians.
鬼ヶ淵主導名という名称に
鬼ヶ淵
You
村
see, the village of Onigafuchi was said to be inhabited by demons that devoured humans.
言われてたんだそうです。今でも
Even now it's believed that the blood of these demons partially courses through the veins of the villagers. Demons that devour humans?
大石さん
Oishi-san, what are you
それ
saying?
何の話ですか
情報
It's
です。
information.
情
A
報
second.
さっきあなた
I got a lot from you just now. A little too much.
その分
In exchange, I'm giving you a little freebie. Oishi finally smiled, but it didn't seem like he was fooling around.
先を続けてください
Please continue.
人食い鬼たちはです
You
ね
see, these human-devouring
普
demons,
段は仙人
normally they
と
were
は見られ
revered as Taoist
ひっそりと暮らしているん
transcendents
です
and lived tucked away from the rest of the world.
やっぱり
But
人
they
食い
ate
です
people
から
after all, so apparently they'd go to villages in the foothills regularly and abduct their prey.
それをですね
They used to call that being demoned away, or
と言い
onikokushi.
まして
Demoned away. It was the first time I heard such a peculiar phrase. However, I felt something slightly ominous from this horrifying tales of demons abducting people in order to eat them.
ほら
Look, you know how there's the common phrase, spirited away?
あるじゃない人が
When people suddenly go missing one day, they call it that.
この辺りでは
When the same thing happens around here, they call it being demoned away.
その昔話と
How does that old tale relate to the matter at hand?
いえいえ
Oh no,
直接的
there's no
な
direct
関係もない
relationship. I'm just making some
ただ
small
の
talk
おしゃべ
here.
りですがねただ
It's just... Ka-thump, ka-thump. The car shook. At some point, the gravel road had changed to a paved one.
ただ
It's just...
なんで
just what?
この土地に
That around here, the phrase demoned away is somewhat of a code for disappearances and kidnappings. I just thought I'd
と
mention
いうこ
that.
とだけはお話ししておこうと思いまして今回の
I don't know if this has anything to do with the kidnapping of the minister's grandson. Well, there's no deep meaning behind it. It's just, there's that little bit of history. Onikakushi. Human-eating demons coming down to the foothills and abducting their prey. Then, in order to cancel the dam project that threatened to submerge the village they lived in, did they demon away the minister's grandson? Then had they already made an example out of the minister's grandson and eaten him alive? It's a bit of an interesting old tale, isn't it? If you set foot into the demon's village without reason, you'll promptly be captured and eaten alive. So don't go near Onigafuchi. Kids these days might not believe such superstitions, but amongst the older folk in Okinomiya born in the Meiji era, many would never question these warnings. Hinamizawa village was feared by the people in the area. I recalled that piece of information I heard from the Prefectural Public Safety Division. In any case, we're in the boonies out here. It's kind of expected that there be some superstitions around. Somebody from Tokyo like you, Akasaka-san, probably couldn't even begin to imagine it, could you? The man-eating demons, as the price for violating the sanctity of their village, kidnapped the minister's grandson and swallowed him whole. That ludicrous idea flew through my head. It was so absurd I was half disgusted with myself. Oishi was just teasing me. Stupid. It was all really so stupid. Come to think of it, by then I may have already been seized by the curse of the dubious village. For me to realize that would take a little more time. Oh shit, new tips unlocked. There's fucking 4 of them. Okay. Achievement unlocked. Land of the Demons. Okay, view new tips. Phone call with Yukie.
Oh, really? It's tough when it's such a sudden assignment. Please be careful. Where are you headed? You're already there?
Whenever I headed out on assignment, she would ask where. Not just Yukie, but anybody would have asked the same question. If it was a cold place, she would urge me to pack a thick jacket. If it was far, she'd warn me to be careful on the drive over. It was just normal, everyday concern that led to asking such an obvious thing. I felt sad that I couldn't answer such a run-of-the-mill question.
Sorry. It's something that you can't talk about, isn't it? Please be careful.
Sorry, Yukie.
At some point, you started apologizing right away. Even though when you first started your job, you were all gung-ho about it.
Yukie laughed as though she had realized something. At times like this, Yukie had the magical power to see right through me.
It's already been quite a while since I was admitted to the hospital. Are you finally getting lonely?
Don't tease me. I'm too old to get lonely.
Oh, really? You actually like to be doted on, don't you? Don't you start getting a little faint of heart when I'm not around?
Ah, jeez. I can see the little devil horn sprouting from your head right now. You've always been like this.
You can't hide it. You can't hide it. If I don't play with you, you'll get all lonely. I can hear your tail wagging over the phone.
This side of Yukie wasn't something you could guess existed from seeing her usual modest behavior, and it was something that she didn't show to anybody else but me. Normally I poke her to hide my embarrassment and bring an end to the conversation, and I couldn't do that over the phone. Of course, Yukie was clever. She was teasing me because of that.
I wonder when I figured out that giving you grief was just this much fun.
Give me a break. In any case, it's good to hear you so lively.
I know, right? Did I cheer you up?
I called Yukie to keep her from feeling lonely when she was by herself in the hospital room. Of course, that was nothing more than a pretense that I, being shy, had come up with. It seemed that Yukie had long since seen through that act. Yeah.
Please phone again. When I'm not feeling up to it, I'll get my father to talk with you. Although, if you're talking with my father, I get the feeling that you'd be standing at attention on the other side of the line.
For a while longer, Yukie kept teasing me without letting me end the call. A record of opening remarks. Chairman Redacted. Members of the Redacted Party. Congratulations are due, as we are celebrating 25 years since our founding. These past 25 years have seen much growth in this prefecture. The once quiet scenery of nothing but fields now has seen the opening of a new stop for the bullet train, and with the development of the highway, we've seen the rebirth of a modern city bursting with youthful energy. We've reaped the benefits of new businesses and industry, and with the special reverence the residents of this prefecture have for time-honored traditions, history and culture, business and industry. With these ideals in harmony, they have accomplished in growing their city into one of Japan's foremost metropolises. Of course, the development of this prefecture couldn't have happened without the growth of this party. We resolved to see every one of our campaign promises to fruition, reaching our targets definitively and expediently like arrows fired from a bow. With these arrows as the fundamental basis of this party, our members have sought to pierce the obstructions preventing the happiness of the residents of this prefecture. But I do believe that everybody here is unlike an ordinary arrow. While being as unfaltering and straightforward, we have not neglected in seeking solutions that conform to the current day and age, while also keeping an eye on the future. An arrow, once loosed, can only fly to its destination. Everyone here, however, is no simple arrow. Even once loosed from a bow, without neglecting our studies, while employing new methods, and implementing more effective and flexible ideas, thus being able to change trajectories mid-flight, we are magical arrows. The modern age marches ever forward. Sometimes it marches faster than the time taken from planning to execution. The following part was not in the script. It is thought to have been ad-libbed by the minister. For example, there have recently been numerous problems with the Hinamizawa power plant project. Rather than forcing through the project solely because it was decided upon by the government, it is necessary to reflect on and adjust to the ever-changing needs of the residents, the region, and the next generation. The protests by the local residents that surround the Hinamizawa Dam, these are also the will of the people of this prefecture. If you feel that there is no need to listen because the project has already been finalized, then you do nothing more than shed a poor light on Japan's post-war democracy. The following is as per the script. For the lasting happiness of the citizens of Japan and the residents of this prefecture, please consider these policies thoroughly. I believe, however, we have all gained something from the flexibility and foresight of this party. I have taken up much of your time. However, allow me to say the following to celebrate the 25th anniversary of our founding. Chairman, members of the party in attendance, thank you very much for today. From the opening remarks of the Party Prefectural Forum in its 25th anniversary celebration. Gears and fire and the taste of honey. The world is filled with people blessed with relationships. Of course, that doesn't mean that everyone is connected to each other. It's obvious that on the other side of the planet there are people laughing and crying who can't possibly have an effect on you. However, in the extremely limited community of the neighborhood, that sort of connection is just a matter of fact. It's quite possible that a single remarkable event could have massive consequences inside a small community. If you were to increase that in scale, a perfect stranger on the other side of the globe might become enough of a legend to have an effect on our lives. Well, it's not always that way. Like I said at the beginning, the links between people basically aren't that relevant in the grand scheme of things. Whether some household nearby is having steak or croquettes doesn't matter to me. When I put on my shoes, it doesn't matter to anybody whether I put the right one on first or the left. This much the average person can understand. But actually, in reality, this is the truth. The bonds between people are quite well defined. It's not just a matter of distance or of being far or near. For example, let's say that person A's actions have some effect on me. Even then, person B's actions could have absolutely no consequence on my life. The reverse also holds true. Just because my actions affect person A, that doesn't always mean that they affect person B as well. Let's put it bluntly. If the bonds between people are like gears in a machine, the gear that represents me meshes with some people, but is isolated from others. There are some who would try arguing against this. Those people would bring up the example of gears in a clock. Each gear, indeed, only directly meshes with one or two others. However, if you rotate one gear, the one next to it is moved, which connects to the next one, and the next. In the end, all the gears are moving. There is a logic behind this, more than enough to convince the average person. Why is the argument convincing? The answer is simple. The relationships between people are ambiguous, and can only be described conceptually. How the gears are connected and how their movements are chained together cannot be used as a fundamental explanation, so it throws a wet blanket on that argument. So for the people who like that explanation, I'll use the example of a clock again to refute it. First of all, to say that this world is a singular clock would be wrong. That is, there isn't only one clock. There exist many clocks in this world, each counting their own time. If you think about it, the idea that this world is just one big clock is the height of arrogance. Even if you use the analogy of gears to explain human relationships, then you should be able to explain it using an analogy of multiple clocks unrelated to a single gear. Neighbors A and B. A is a gear in the same clock as me, so it's best to remain civil. B is a gear in a different clock, so he doesn't really matter to me at all. That's the kind of clear distinction I'm talking about. You want to say I'm being fallacious? Then let's change the analogy to something more familiar so you can understand. You've probably heard the phrase, a fire on the opposite shore sometime in your life, no? For example, if your neighbor's house was on fire, you'd probably try and help to put it out, wouldn't you? It'd be awful if the fire spread and burned down your own house, after all. But what if that fire was in a town on the opposite side of a river? Would you still go out of your way to help? You wouldn't, would you? Even though it would be the wrong thing to do, there's no way the fire could spread to your own house. Even if it turned into a huge conflagration, there's no relation between the houses that will spread fire to yours and those that won't. With this basic example, you should be able to see the difference between gears that are or aren't related to your own. Having said that, there's still a lot to think about, even without a river to divide it. After all, it's not a spatial problem like being on the other side of the river, is it? Interesting. Why does the taste of honey come into it? The chick in the trunk. The car had stopped. But he didn't know any more than that. For not only was he blindfolded, but locked in the trunk of the car. How could people become this powerless just by being robbed of their sight? He absolutely wouldn't have known this without experiencing it firsthand. He soon realized it was pointless to try and undo his bonds, with the confines of the trunk quickly making him lightheaded. He had no choice but to let this mild torture dull his senses. That's why, when the car stopped and the unpleasant vibration ceased as the engine was killed, he couldn't help but delude himself that he was being set free, even though nothing had been resolved in reality. Of course, he was soon removed from that delusion. He strained his ears when he heard one of the men who had abducted him, and an older man he was hearing for the first time struck up a conversation. Nice to see you. The chick is in the trunk. He struggled so much that he's probably exhausted right now, but there's not a mark on him, just as ordered. Oh, must have been a handful. The trunk opened, letting in a blast of fresh, cool air. Even though up until just now he had been thinking about getting out of that stuffy trunk, when it was actually opened, he suddenly became uneasy. Enough so that he wished that the lid of the trunk would once again close, separating himself from them. Suddenly, somebody stroked his head. Of course, since he was blindfolded, he couldn't tell if the hand was petting him or simply evaluating how easy it would be to remove his scalp. Unable to tell the difference, he could only freeze as he imagined the worst-case scenario. Poor little bugger. He's shaking. Just stay calm for a bit. The older man said that kindly as he gently stroked the boy's head. This must be real tough for you. But you see, your Gramps is a nice man. He'll help you soon enough. Having heard nothing but the average standard dialect his whole life, the older man's distinct intonation left a deep impression on the boy. But he had no idea what he was saying. For your Gramps to register as meaning your grandfather took a while to process. Eventually, the hand that was stroking his head loosened the blindfold. Can't keep his eyes covered. If he splits his face open, it'd be bad. Huh? And with that, we might as well take out the gag. Can't breathe like that. It'll be trouble if he yells. Leave him to us. Jeez, you guys don't know how to treat somebody. The main family said no rough stuff. You better remember that well. Yeah. We won't do anything stupid. As long as the kid cooperates, that is. The man's hand prodded roughly and repeatedly at the boy's head. A rugged hand, unlike the affectionate one that had been stroking his head before. Just stay cooperative. If you struggle, there's no guarantee what will happen. That cliched threat was literally beaten into his head. Okay. That's the first chapter then. Save and load. Waking up in a cheap hotel in the city was by no means pleasant. This looks exactly like the fucking room for the start of Portal 2. Exactly. I don't think that one had like a bathroom door there. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this also looks exactly like a hotel room I've been in before anyway. So I guess it's just a common room layout, but still. That was the first thing I thought of. I remembered even during the long camping trips we had during grade school, I wanted to get home quickly, counting out the days left on my fingers. Waking up this morning, I was somehow reminded of that. Was it a need to be with my wife when she gave birth? A particular type of homesickness? As a productive member of society, as a public servant bound to fulfill his duties, it was pathetic indeed. Those negative emotions faded as I downed my breakfast, which was surprisingly not half bad. The meeting with the informant that Oishi had provided would be tonight. Until then, I couldn't just be glazing around. The Onigafuchi Guardians was protesting the dam's construction in various ways. Included in this was a strategy for improving public relations, which could be categorized into two major forms, combative and peaceful. In regards to the former, as an attempt to keep law enforcement in check, they appealed to the public's sympathy by highlighting the oppressive and inhumane tactics of the police and the brutality of the riot squads. The latter, peaceful, route stressed how precious the natural surroundings of Hinamizawa was, seeking people who would oppose the dam on environmental grounds. As part of that, the village of Hinamizawa had celebrated zoologists and botanists, as well as environmental groups, to advertise the nature surrounding the town. According to the news, in recent years there had been a group calling itself Hinamizawa Nature Watching, setting up free sightseeing tours. I would have liked to have taken advantage of the opportunity, but when I called the village administrative offices, they said it was too late to apply for the tour, and they were still undecided as to when they'd be doing another one. I see. So there's no applications for next time. Too bad.
Are you a member of an environmental group? Or maybe somebody from a magazine?
No, just here privately.
Privately? Then you're a tourist?
Something like that. It's my hobby to take pictures that display how beautiful nature can be. I read in a magazine that there were some precious nature reserves here, so I was looking forward to it. I knew there was an article that had something like that written in it, but I hadn't actually read it. Was it this ad-libbed line not going to work? However, contrary to my expectations, the person I was speaking to laughed happily.
Then come! The village is a little busy right now, but you're totally welcome here.
In that case, I'll graciously accept the offer. Thank you.
How are you getting around? Car? If that's the case, could I ask for your license plate number? No, there's no ulterior motive behind that.
That was probably related to the checkpoints they'd set up on the way to the village. If I didn't give them my license plate number, I'd most likely be hindered in various ways. I thought about using the car I'd borrowed from the prefecture, but I was lost on whether it was okay to tell them that plate number. If the Onigafuchi Guardians was behind this incident, there was no guarantee that they wouldn't be able to find out who I was. I had to play it safe, so I elected to refrain from using the car. No, actually, I'm not using a car. If there's a bus or something, I'd prefer that.
We do have a bus, actually. The route is going to be discontinued soon, though. You can take that. It departs from Okinomiya Station.
Thank you very much. I'll look out for it.
When will you be coming? Is it your first time in Hinamizawa? If it is, you must be unsure about a lot of things. If you let me know, I can have somebody show you around.
Oh no, I couldn't ask that much of you.
Don't worry about it. That's just a bit of PR we do to protect nature around the village.
Judging by what I saw at the checkpoint, the villagers were at the very least wary of outsiders. That's why, in order to move in and out of the village freely, I had to travel with somebody like Oishi, or side with the dam protests. Having an interest in the natural environment surrounding the village tied it into the peaceful type of PR that the village was using. I was a bit against having a watchdog attached to me, but that might actually work out in my favor. The entire village was fired up about the dam protests, so I might be lucky enough to hear some especially candid opinions from the residents. Given that, there was no real reason for me to refuse their offer. Is it really alright? If so, that'll really help. After that, I was shown the bus schedule, and directed to which bus I should get on. Somebody would come and meet me at the bus stop in the village. After showing me around a spot I'd taken interest in, there was no doubt they'd bring me to somewhere like an anti-dam information center. Then, over a cup of tea, they'd try and indoctrinate me into accepting their principles and beliefs. Well, if that was their aim, there'd be a lot of freebies involved. The world is about give and take, after all. I couldn't be going in a suit. I pulled some plain clothes out of my travel case and changed it to something more casual. After that, after calming down by watching some local television, I left the hotel and set out for Okinomiya Station. The bus route that I was told would be soon discontinued certainly didn't look that way. There was more than enough trips on the schedule, and the number of passengers was by no means sparse. It was the main link to Okinomiya, the only town in the area. The types of passengers that stood out were older folk who didn't look like they could drive, and housewives who didn't seem like they had a license. If the area was submerged at the bottom of the lake, it wouldn't matter if there was a bus route. That's why it was going to be discontinued, in the unnatural scheme of things. I could catch a glimpse of the government's intent in cutting off their means of transportation to bully the village into emptying out sooner. It makes sense, according to the documents. Talks between the Ministry of Construction and the locals broke down quite early. The government decided from the start to take an aggressive stance on the matter. It was like the fairy tale with the north wind and the sun trying to get the traveler to remove his cloak. Even their bullying had meaning to it. The reason why the Onigafuchi Guardians resisted so violently was because the government was doing unseemly things like that. I was somebody who lived in Tokyo, so for a village or two out in the boonies like this to be submerged didn't seem like a big deal. But I guess for somebody actually living here, it would be a vitally huge problem. This route will be discontinued at the end of this financial year. Thank you for your patronage up to this point. We look forward to your continued patronage on our other lines. Okinomiya Transportation. Gazing lazily at the notice of discontinued service posted inside the bus, I counted down the number of stops until the designated one. Along the way, we passed through the checkpoint before without stopping. They knew what time the bus was coming, so they'd opened up the barricade ahead of time. From here on out was enemy territory. My palms had at some point become coated in a thin film of sweat. Now arriving at Ukita Waterworks. Now arriving at Ukita Waterworks. Are there any passengers disembarking? I hurriedly pressed the stop request button as the designated stop was announced. For none of the numerous passengers to be getting off here meant that it must be quite a remote place. In actuality, the stop I got off at was so abnormally run down that I could tell it was barely used. As soon as I stepped out, an intense atmosphere completely different than the interior of the bus assailed my body. Right now, Oishi or Hondaya weren't beside me. That's right. At present, I was alone in the middle of enemy territory. My adversaries probably thought I was just an ordinary tourist, but that was nothing more than a ruse. But if by some mistake my true identity was to be exposed, it brought back the terrifying words I'd heard at the prefectural office, that if somebody was attacked in Hinamizawa with a knife, there wouldn't be any evidence left behind. I didn't seem suspicious, did I? My clothing was currently casual. It was exactly the type of clothing that a city slicker that viewed the countryside as a wholesome getaway would wear. A camera and knapsack. Inside were various things needed for hiking. It was still only June, and maybe it was unusual, but the sun was shining down like it was already the middle of summer. The fact that I didn't bring a hat must seem odd. No, it wasn't something to be that concerned about. It's alright, I was just a normal tourist. Just normal. Was there anything suspicious about me? Asking that as I turned around to look at the bus that was departing. All the passengers by the window were staring down at me silently. They were staring right at me, as if they had seen right through my proud little outfit. Just staring, looking down on me. Countless stares rained down like needles on me from the windows open to air out the bus. All that rained down were stares. None of them were saying a word, but all the more, their silent stares told me more than a million words could. Hurry up and go back to Tokyo, you outsider. No, I'm... There was no reason for me to speak. My quiet voice was drowned out by the sound of the engine. The bus, as if to torment me, set out slowly, and after doing more than enough to intimidate me, sped off. A thin film of sweat began to rise from my entire body. According to the documents, it was a village that seemed wary of outsiders. Don't be suspicious, don't be suspicious. Its population was small as well. If they saw an unfamiliar face, they would be quick to identify that face as an outsider. On top of that, nobody else had gotten off at this stop. It was a bus stop they normally just passed on by. Somebody actually getting off there was no doubt that it had drawn some attention. But this wasn't a slip-up. They were the ones who directed me to get off at this stop. There was nothing to worry about. I knew that I was just nervous since this was my first undercover assignment. My more seasoned colleagues referred to us as the new generation that didn't know how to lose their cool. But that wasn't true at all. In order to calm my breathing down, I exhaled the unpleasant air residing in the pit of my stomach. I couldn't help but pray that my apprehensions would disappear like the white clouds of exhaust expelled from the bus. There was a small shed there to serve as a shelter if it rained, and it was there I decided to wait. Inside the shed, one wall was plastered with posters advertising the dam opposition efforts. It was like the heartfelt screams of the villagers were recorded on that wall. Inside that shelter, I felt an inexplicable pressure. It wasn't like I had any real relation to the dam project, but it still made me feel hesitant about being inside there. That was just how filled with the force of denial that space was. And inside that uneasy space was a girl. Inside that shed, covered in words written in broad brushstrokes berating the policies regarding the dam and calling for action, there was a girl sitting there with a drowsy gaze, as if half asleep. The two images clashed so much that I could only stand there dumbfounded for a moment, trapped in such a surreal environment. If I stepped inside, who knew what kind of oafish noises I would accidentally make? I couldn't be disturbing this girl's slumber like that. Having thought this, I gave up on entering the shed. It was just a sleeping kid, so why was I worked up about it? Finally, I realized. This girl, to us as a married couple, was the very image of our ideal child. Even after numerous examinations at the hospital, we didn't know for sure what our child's gender was. Whether we could tell if they were a boy or a girl was, in the end, dependent on whether or not we could get an image of their genitalia. There was, of course, no guarantee that it was a girl, but with things the way they were, the possibility was high. Even so, Yukie had been saying that the chances that it were a boy or a girl were even. But in my heart, I'd already decided that our coming child was a girl. Since the day I decided that until now, it was so fun to imagine how our child would grow up that I couldn't help myself. Amongst those numerous imagined forms, the one that I thought to be the most ideal had materialized right in front of me. Of course, a little of it was due to the circumstances. In my ideal image, her hair would be on the short side. The girl in front of me, though, had long hair. It was almost as if somebody had taken my ideal and made some small adjustments. It certainly wasn't something unpleasant. Even so, I felt like I was sullying her just by looking at her like that. She had an immaculate, no, a divine air about her. That girl with an angelic smile, with a yawn wide enough you could see her molars, woke up all of a sudden. I didn't mean to peep, but locking eyes with a girl who'd just woken up like this somehow made me feel like I was playing a prank on her. I wasn't doing anything shady, but I became flustered. The girl spoke. No, cried out. Me. Me? Like that character on the show with the puppets? With the orange hair? I thought it was just one of those greetings kids do. So in order to prove I wasn't a suspicious person, I responded in kind.
Me.
Me? Me?
Me.
The girl stared at me dubiously with a doll-like expression. Cute, but cold and hard to read. Well, I wouldn't be surprised. There was, after all, an unfamiliar man right in front of her when she woke up who responded with meep when she said the same. Suspicious. She definitely thought I was suspicious. Me. We were both at a loss for words. No, the only one lost was me. The girl in front of me, as if inquiring about my motives, stared at me intently. In this silence, I felt like I was the one who had to say something first. Damn it, this girl was way better at interrogating somebody than Oishi. I'm not anybody suspicious. Good job, Akasaka.
私は
I'm...
Nipa.
Nipa? What I could have only described as a cold expression suddenly blossomed into a smile, one that soon infected me. You might be familiar with the term angelic smile. To me, it was like that phrase was created just to describe the smile she gave me. The girl smiling while saying, Nipa, probably wanted me to return the favor in kind. That's right, this is a kid's form of communication. Having the other person emulate what you just did was a rudimentary form of mutual understanding.
Nipa.
Nipa. It was a beautiful afternoon in the early summer. What was I doing? Nipa. Nipa. Well, whatever. This was interesting in its own way. Cute how... If making somebody happy with just a smile was the work of angels, then this girl was definitely one of them. I couldn't help but pray that my own child, who was soon to be born, would grow up to be like this girl. That strangely gentle moment was finally brought to the end by the arrival of a car. An older person waved at me from the driver's seat, a dry smile plastered on their face. Hi there, good afternoon. Sorry for being late. You're the tourist who phoned yesterday, right? Huh? Yes. Sorry to keep you waiting. I'm running a little behind because of the farm. Hop right on in. Looks like the weather isn't going to hold up for much longer, so I'll show you around real quick. Huh? The weather? It changes fast around here. There'll probably be evening showers again today. If that happens, you won't be able to take any pictures. Come on, get in. Turning around, the girl was standing right behind me with an intrigued expression. Her body language somehow reminded me of a stray cat that followed you around after you played with it a little. So charming. Oh, well, if it isn't Rika-chama! Praise be, praise be. A girl named Rika with an immaculate smile, and an old man praising her while rubbing prayer beads in his hands. Rika is fucking adorable, yeah. It was a rather mysterious sight to behold. So the girl turns her face at me, tilting her head a little in a cutesy manner. After seeing that, the elder introduces me as a tourist who came to sightsee Hinamizawa.
A young'un who came to the village for sightseeing.
The girl, Rika-chan, said that with a smile as she clung onto my arm. Well, yeah. I heard that this village is surrounded by a precious nature reserve, so I very much wanted to record that with my camera. Even though I look like this, I really like to take pictures.
Tomitake, Mike too!
Huh? Tomitake? Huh?
Makino? Is it okay if I come along too?
I couldn't! You could come along, Rika-chama, but there's nothing interesting to see. You should go play near the shrine or something. A distinctly displeased expression creeped across Rika-chan's face. Being able to show one's emotions honestly on their faces was a privilege young children had. If it's not too much of a problem, could you bring this child along with us? When I said those helpful words, another smile spread across Rika-chan's face with another "Nipa" as she clung to me again. Not bad at all. I want this girl to call me Papa. No. Father. Dad. Daddy? What am I doing? Ever since I met this girl, I was completely off my game. Just calm down. Nothing I can do, I guess. Rika-chama never listens, even if you say no. Come on, hop on in. Come now, Rika-chama too. The old man descended from the driver's seat and opened up the sliding door of the van, which had Onigafuchi Alliance Town Council stenciled on the side. Rika-chan brushed me aside, dove into a seat, and began bouncing around right away. It seemed like she was thoroughly enjoying the bouncy springs. Come on now, Rika-chama. If you like that, our guest can't sit down. Hey, Rika-chama! Girls are nice. I wonder if my child will play around like this too. No. It was written in that guide to raising a child that you shouldn't dote on them. Kids are kids. And if you don't raise them strictly without spoiling them...
It's soft and springy. Nipa!
Nipa... I'm definitely going to be a terrible father. It was decided that I would be a doting parent before my child was even born. Well then, sir, I'll show you around some places that I think look nice. Have you eaten lunch yet? Yeah, I had a light meal at the hotel. Is that so? Well then, let's get going.
We're setting off on a tour of Hinamizawa. Yay!
Is it alright if I call you Rika-chan?
Sure. My name is Rika Furude. I can already do addition in the tens digit.
Oh, is that true? That's amazing.
I don't count on my fingers. I can do it all in my head.
The way she insisted upon that was just too cute. At some point, the nervousness I had about being alone in enemy territory had evaporated like it was never there at all. I had to be at least a little thankful that I met this girl. Well then, let's get going! It's time for Hinamizawa nature watching! The old man stepped on the gas with a great deal of gusto. Step on the gas. Let me. The old man, who was apparently named Makino. Yes. Uh-oh. Oh, my mouse wasn't working for a second. Was he the same Makino that was listed as the auditor of the Onigafuchi Guardians? Showed me around places that were all breathtaking. Even though I wasn't really here for sightseeing, I couldn't help but be impressed. First of all, this was different from the simple scenery of a city. The scenery of a charming village like this, no matter how mundane it seemed to the villagers, had a tranquil appeal to it. At first, I was only releasing the shutter as part of my tourist act, but midway through I found myself taking pictures out of pure interest. Tourist traps had their own unique allure to them, but there was nothing like that here. I was especially captivated by the unspoiled nature of the place. If there wasn't that whole uproar over the dam, I would want to bring Yukia with me here some other time. I wanted her to breathe in this fresh air, as well as show her this rejuvenating verdant scenery.
Is something like this that interesting? You're a strange person, Akasaka.
No, these cylindrical mailboxes are rare nowadays. They have a certain nostalgic air about them. You wouldn't happen to think that they're elegant, would you?
Is Hinamizawa fun?
Yeah, it's fun. Once she's discharged from the hospital, I'd like to bring my wife here at least once. With the child that would be born by that time. Right now she's in the hospital waiting to give birth. She's due any day now. It'd be nice if they're a cute girl like you. Sir, it seems like congratulations is soon to be in order. Still, that's not good. To leave your wife behind and play around in a place like this? I was momentarily at a loss for words. It was exactly how Makino said. There was no good reason for a man who was waiting for his wife to give birth to be playing around idly in this place. Did I slip up? Well, we had already planned this trip to Hinamizawa a long time ago. My wife's family is with her, so it's alright. If you had this planned so far in advance, then how come you didn't make the sign-up deadline for the nature watching? If you did, you could have toured around on a nice bus instead of being cramped up in here. It didn't seem as if Makino was actually digging for anything, but if this conversation continued any longer, it would put some unexpected holes in my cover. I halted the conversation by pretending to take another picture. Well then, for our last stop, I'll take you to the place with the best view. It was slightly before evening. The sun was still burning brightly, but a cool breeze had begun to mix itself into the air. It seemed my exploration of Hinamizawa with Rika-chan was just about done.
The place with the best view?
Well, Rika-chan, where else could it be but the view from around the shrine? Hearing that, Rika-chan smiled even more.
Well then, I'll introduce you to my home, Akasaka.
Huh? By Rika-chan's home, you mean... Huh? The shrine! Furude Shrine. There's an observation platform. You can see some real pretty scenery. Furude Shrine. The girl who called Furude Shrine her home, Rika. If I remembered correctly, her full name was Rika Furude. And Furude was... That's right! One of the three families. Even if the Sonozaki family is said to hold all the actual power, it was still one of the old houses that held some authority. No, more important than that right now was Furude Shrine. If I remembered correctly, Oishi had told me, within the grounds of the Furude Shrine, there were the offices of the Onigafuchi Guardians. And since the land around Furude Shrine were private property, the police couldn't set foot there heedlessly. Furude Shrine, where even Oishi couldn't simply set foot into. The main base of operations for the Onigafuchi Guardians. I had been given the unexpected opportunity to enter there. I couldn't have asked for more. I'm looking forward to it. Please, if you would. Well then, let's get there quick. The weather seems to be getting a little iffy. The sky had suddenly become overcast. It wouldn't be odd if it started raining soon. The cicadas, as if trying to finish their daily allotment of chirps before the evening, cried out even more fervently. The van stopped in the shrine's parking lot. Also parked there were numerous other vans with loudspeakers mounted on top of them to act as makeshift propaganda vehicles. On the side of each vehicle was scrawled, "The dam project must be demolished. Defend our homeland to the last. No Oyashiro-sama's anger," or a slogan of a similar kind. They gave the feeling that even without using the loudspeakers, there was enough to overwhelm any onlookers. Vertical banners were erected in various places. The contents of those banners were similar. They were all objections against the dam, or crude insults towards the government. There were horizontal banners, placards, and so on and so forth. They proclaimed that without a doubt this was the headquarters of the Onigafuchi Guardians. For Rika-chan, however, this hectic place was also her home.
We've arrived. And home.
Rika-chan crawled over my lap and exited the vehicle first. Makino had noticed that I was looking at protest banners. The shrine also has the offices of the anti-dam movement. For you, this probably brings back memories of the anti-security treaty complex back in the day. Need to go to Japan, just get a shit ton of Higurashi merch. It's so expensive on eBay. Yeah, I don't think I have any Higurashi merch. I'd like some, though. My favorite kinds of merch to have are, honestly, t-shirts and posters. T-shirts just because I wear them a lot, and, like, it'd be a good way to represent my interests. I've had a couple people notice t-shirts I've had and be like, "Oh, you like so-and-so." Well, yeah. So I like that, and I like just representing the things that I like in that way. And posters, because I like to have them up and just, you know, having something look nice as decoration, while also representing my interest. Though I haven't actually had any posters up in a very long time, because I have not had my own long-term room in a long time. I know no one really cares about this, but right now I don't really have a room. I'm staying in a flat by myself, but it's not my place, and the room isn't mine. I'm just using it. It's my mum's. Before that, I was at uni, and I was there for 4 years, and I was at a house near there for 3 years. And I could have decorated it, but I'm like, well, I know it's only 3 years, so I don't want to put stuff up, even if it's only for 3 years. It's kind of stupid. And then before that, we had been in a different place where I didn't have a room, and I had to sleep in the living room. And so the last time I've actually had a room was, like, mid-2017. Even then, there was 2 rooms I had that we were not in for long enough for me to even put the posters up in. Only before that, which was mid-2017, I was the last time I had posters, and I don't see myself being able to put up posters for the foreseeable future, which is a shame. I've actually collected quite a few over the years that I've never put up, because I just don't have anywhere to do it. I don't know if or when I'm going to get my own room anytime soon, probably not. I need to save up a bunch of money first, so kind of a shame, but yeah. Anyway, yeah, I would definitely like Higurashi merch. It's one of my favorite series. Actually, that said, I have the DVDs of the anime. So yeah, that's it. Anyway, student movements against government policies, movements that bordered on terrorist activity, were at one time commonplace, if only in order to garner global attention. Students holding out in lecture halls, brawling with the riot squads that charged in. It was an age where wasting one's youth like that was widely considered a road to glory. It was slightly before my time. I'm not really an activist or anything. I studied without incident and graduated without incident. I don't really agree with the violence or occupations they use to protest the government's policies. Oh? You have quite the nice opinion there. Shape is fucking run! If you have an opinion on a policy, vote for the candidate who shares your view, or enter the political board yourself and assert your beliefs in a lawful manner. That's the foundation of democracy. I don't think that's something you should challenge with violence. For a youngin', you have some fine beliefs. I saw that feeling of respect reflected in Makino's gaze. At that moment, something tugged at my sleeve. They have plush figures of Rika and Rena on eBay, but they're over 100 euros. Love to get shirts too. The DVDs and mangas are cheap in Japan, just have an abundance. I can't remember how much I spent on the DVDs. I want to say it was only like £30 maybe. It definitely wasn't more than like 50 or 60 for the set of both. Maybe it might have been 50 or 60. I'm not sure, but it wasn't more than that. I did also cosplay at Enna once a long time ago, but that was like my mom made the costume for me, and a friend of mine made her cleaver as a prop. It was a really shitty cosplay though. Anyway.
I have no idea what Akasaka is saying.
Rika-chan, feeling like she was the only one who didn't understand the conversation, had a look of displeasure on her face. That expression was so charming I had to keep myself from grinning like an idiot. It's often said that a father wants to spoil his daughter rotten. I think I understood that feeling very well. Sorry. It was a little bit hard for Rika-chan to understand, wasn't it? Japan is a peaceful country, so you have to argue your point in a peaceful manner. You shouldn't resort to violence, in other words. No matter how much I explained, a girl who was just boasting about being able to carry digits over when adding things probably wouldn't understand. It probably wasn't something to talk about in front of Rika-chan anyway.
So then, Akasaka, how do you think we should keep our village from being flooded by the dam?
Even if I regretted my careless words, it was too late now. Here I was at the main headquarters of an organization, telling them their way of doing things was illegal. Preaching that violence was not the answer. A complicated feeling had mixed itself in with the respect in Makino's gaze. It was then I finally realized. It wasn't that simple. There wasn't a soul who would argue that what I was saying wasn't correct. Using violence to get one's way was something that everybody knew you shouldn't be proud of. However, right now, Hinamizawa was in a predicament that couldn't be overcome with peaceful means alone. The legality of the Hinamizawa Dam project, through the efforts of the various propaganda campaigns enacted by the Onigafuchi Guardians, was being called into question. If they further strengthened their campaign, they might be able to suspend or change the construction plans, but that was at the most just a possibility. If the government proceeded with the construction as planned, it wouldn't be long before this place was at the bottom of a lake. If it wasn't for the unrestrained resistance of the residents of Hinamizawa, this place might have already have been underwater.
We can't live anywhere else other than here. We can't live in the city.
If I ever come to Germany for Manga Comic-Con, let you know, and you'll let you know that I'll cosplay then, and you'll come as someone else from Higurashi. I don't know where the outfit is. Also, my hair's too long. It was at a time when it was like 2015, 2016, so my hair was not as long as it is now. My mom kind of like pinned it up a little bit, so it was only poking out under the hat, so it kind of looked like Lena's bob cut. But I don't think I could do that now. Maybe. Also, it definitely doesn't fit me anymore. I need to lose weight. If I did, for whatever reason, come to Germany for that, then I would probably find a different cosplay. But I mean, yeah. I mean, if I, if that does happen, I'll let you know. Why not? The words of this remarkably young girl were all too accurate, carrying with them the screens of the hearts and minds of the residents of Hinamizawa. Of course, there was nothing I could say to respond to that. I could only respond to Makino and Rika-chan's heavy words with silence. I'm sorry. This isn't a problem that an outsider should lightly just poke their nose into, is it? I apologize. Makino, unsure of how to reply for a while, could only laugh pointlessly. It's nothing that concerns guests that make their home somewhere else. If you enjoy it here, please tell all your friends that Hinamizawa is a wonderful place, please. If word spreads to dozens, maybe even hundreds of people, then that ridiculous plan to submerge this place at the foot of a dam will eventually fall apart. He followed that with a smile that said, please don't think much of it. Makino letting me not worry that much was really was a stroke of good fortune. I come as Keiichi and you'll do Oishi. God. My friend would be better as Keiichi. There was actually, like, not so much now that he's an adult and has grown facial hair, for one thing, but there was a period of time when the two of us first got into Higurashi. It actually used to be his favorite as well, but I think he's found other stuff he likes more now. And he never even fucking finished the second season anyway, but that's a story for another time. He had weird, striking resemblance to Keiichi. He looked really similar to him. And I know that Keiichi also, like, looks kind of generic anyway, but, like, there was a resemblance there. Except that he wore glasses. But not all the time. Actually, I don't even remember the last... Wait, does he wear glasses? No, I'm not even sure. I think he did. I don't think I've seen him wear them in a long time, though. Anyway, beside the point, he eventually based his username off of Keiichi. I think he was actually in one of the early streams. His username is Keishiki, which is similar to that. So, yeah. Anyway. Becoming infatuated with the idea of making friends with a little girl had made me completely forget my apprehension at being in enemy territory. Being reminded of this right before I was going to step foot into their headquarters might have been a good thing. If we'd had this exchange in the middle of their office, if there was a short-tempered youth in there, they might have come at me. Thinking of how extreme they were, in the worst case, my life could have been in danger. It seemed that I looked quite despondent in that moment. Makino, thinking he had said something wrong, became flustered trying to think of a way to improve my mood. I was a bit careless just now. I'm very sorry. No, don't worry that much about it. The sights you showed me around the village were all beautiful, wonderful places. I really do want to come here one more time. If this beautiful village is going to be submerged at the bottom of the lake, I can understand why you would fight so desperately. I had somehow managed to use my despondent look to change the topic in my favor. After a bit, Makino had returned to his usual high spirits. It seemed he believed I completely sympathized with his point of view. No, let's leave the talk at that for now. There's a place around here with a really great view.
Let's go, Akasaka.
Rika-chan, seemingly happy to be free from all the boring and gloomy adult talk, bounded up the stone steps. There was no real need to run, but in order to catch up with her, I also darted up the steps. There were several tents belonging to the town council erected on the shrine grounds. Inside the tents were several folding tables and chairs, and a number of the older town council members were livening things up with chit-chat. They weren't saying anything incendiary, like the dam project must be destroyed. It was just some relaxed idle chit-chat between local geezers. The normal sort of calming scenery. At the entrance of a shed that looked like a meeting place, there was a large sign erected with Onigafuchi Guardian's headquarters written in bold brushstrokes. That was their base of operations. To be honest, it was a bit of a letdown. If you ask what I've been imagining, this is a bit embarrassing, but I would have thought it had been something much more dramatic, with barbed wire fences and barricades. My first impression of the place, though, was completely different from that. It looked like a simple backwater town hall. It didn't look like anything other than that. Exactly that. The old folks who were chatting had noticed Rika-chan's presence. Well, if it isn't Rika-chama, it's time for little kids to head on home.
This is my home.
The old folks guffawed since she wasn't wrong. From that exchange, I could tell that this Rika Furude girl was loved by everybody. Makino-san, who's that? The tourist who found? That's right. This is the mayor of Hinamizawa, Mayor Kimiyoshi. He smiled brightly, but there was no mistaking he would be scary if he got angry. By the looks of things, this old man was the president of the Onigafuchi Guardians, none other than Kiichiro Kimiyoshi himself. Welcome to Hinamizawa. What do you think? It's a quiet and relaxing place, isn't it? Yeah. I was able to appreciate a multitude of beautiful places throughout the whole day. I'm thankful for being granted this rare opportunity. Even though you're one of those young'uns, you're quite the gentleman.
Kiichiro, I want to show Akasaka a cool place.
Thinking that the formalities between myself and the mayor had gone on for too long, Rika-chan butted into the conversation. For her to call the mayor by his first name, I felt it was a little strange, but none of the villagers seemed to mind. A girl of the Furude household, one of the 3 families. She was probably different than the average villager.
Akasaka, over here!
Rika-chan tugged at my sleeve. Not resisting, I allowed myself to be pulled over, and waiting for me was a magnificent view. This is amazing.
すごい。
It was an observation deck that looked down on the village. They, knowing that this was the best view in the entire village, kept quiet as I stood there awestruck. I was holding a camera, but I'd completely forgotten to even glance through the viewfinder. This view, no matter what kind of film it was printed on, it wouldn't be able to show everything. If there was a way to explain it, it would only be what I would be able to put into words. It was just such a breathtaking, spectacular view that I struggled to find a comparison. For a while, I was left awestruck. I could only stand there and wonder. God, sorry. A cool breeze helped abate the heat rushing through my body. The comfortable sensation also left me speechless. Rika-chan, who had been holding onto my sleeve the entire time, spoke.
This is my favorite spot.
As she said that, she showed me another adorable smile. That smile seemed very fleeting. If you ask why, that was because the view from her favorite spot would eventually be submerged under the deep green waters of the dam reservoir.
こんな村が
I just can't believe that this village is going to end up at the bottom of a lake.
信じられないよ。
I said it quietly so that only Rika-chan could hear it. I regretted it as soon as I did, for those words were all too cruel. However, Rika-chan didn't let them cast a cloud on her expression. In fact, she replied with a smile.
It won't sink. The dam project will definitely go away.
It was just like a little girl to say something like that. There was no basis for her saying so. It was just her wish.
Akasaka, do you think that this village will be submerged?
沈んでほし
It's
くない
not that I want it to be. I knew how important the dam was. I knew that it was necessary. I just didn't want to recognize the sacrifices that would be made. God. I agreed with the project in general, but couldn't agree with some of the details. But if it meant that this girl's beloved scenery wouldn't be taken away from her, I might be able to object to the dam. I might be able to ignore the interests of the nation, the development of Japan, all for the sake of one girl's smile. I'm not really much of a humanist, but how sentimental of me.
It won't be submerged, because the dam project will soon go away.
Sorry. Jeez. Her words weren't just hopes and dreams, but were seasoned with a hint of resolve. As if she was talking about an unchangeably predetermined outcome. As surely as the sun rising in the east.
もうすぐ
It'll be gone
なく
soon?
なる
Wanting to ask her why she believed that, I turned around.
Yes,
It'll
it'll be gone.
どうして
What makes you say
そう
that?
言い切れるんだい
Well, you see,
She seemed to want to answer, but as though unable to find the right words, she swallowed back what she was about to say.
regardless of what Akasaka does, the dam project will end this year. It's already been decided.
That was a lie. If something like that had already been decided, then the Onigafuchi Guardians would have no reason to continue existing. From my point of view, it was like they were doing nothing more than throwing themselves into an endless battle. If they knew the dam project was cancelled, it would feel much more relaxed around here. This village, though, could hardly be called relaxed. For evidence of that, I just had to remember how charged the atmosphere was at the checkpoint, or at the bus stop. The villagers, with their misplaced resolve, were still fighting. And this girl, even knowing the villagers' grim resolve, had already declared their victory. The villagers throwing themselves into this endless war, and this optimistic girl who said they'd already won. That contrast was somehow strange.
どうしてそう
Why do you think that?
何か隠し
If you
が
know
ある
something that makes you that confident, could you tell
教え
me?
てくれないかい
Rika-chan stayed silent for a while, seemingly choosing what to say.
Because
だって
Because she looked like she was lost on whether she should continue or not. As if she was troubled on whether it was okay for her to say it. That kind of expression.
it's already been decided. There's no other way to say it.
It's already been decided, huh? It really is just like a little girl to say something like that. I couldn't believe it was actually true. She was the only one saying such things with such confidence. My real mission, that I had forgotten about during this fun-filled day, resurfaced at the back of my mind. The kidnapping of the minister's grandson. Had the Onigafuchi Guardians kidnapped the minister's grandson and already succeeded in negotiating the cancellation of the dam project? Did Kimiyoshi actually already know that and was just playing dumb? Was that what this girl was really telling me?
Akasaka.
The girl called out my name suddenly.
なんだい
What is it? Go back to Tokyo. Huh? I wasn't only surprised at that sudden command. Ever since I came to this village, I had never once mentioned I was from Tokyo. Well, based on my accent, she might have been able to guess where I was from. What was I getting so worked up over? It was probably the sudden and complete change in her demeanor. You should definitely go back to Tokyo right away. If not, you will woefully regret it. The girl had been holding my sleeve the entire time. She'd been tugging at my sleeve since hurriedly dragging me over to show me this wonderful view. But this was the adorable Rika-chan who had spent the entire day with. There was no way she could have been replaced with a doppelganger when I wasn't looking. She had been holding onto my sleeve this entire time, but somehow this girl was someone other than Rika-chan. She looked like Rika-chan, but she wasn't. She was some girl I'd never met before. That girl had told me in an indifferent voice that I would eventually regret coming to this village from the bottom of my heart. That would be an incredibly pathetic thing to see. So I thought I'd warn you right now. Why would I come to regret it?
私が後悔することになる
Stop whining. I couldn't believe that I was hearing such cold words come from Rika-chan's mouth. I just couldn't believe it. I can't believe what's coming out of my kid's mouth. Anyway. Was somebody impersonating her using ventriloquism or something? Thinking that, I wanted to take a look around, but the girl's gaze had me pinned down, making me unable to move. When you tried crossing the road when the don't walk sign was up, did your parents finish explaining why it was dangerous before pulling you back to the sidewalk? They'd pull you back right away, wouldn't they? They'd pull you back before explaining why it was dangerous, wouldn't they? In other words, it's something like that. The girl I'd spent time with, Rika Furude, would not speak like that. She would speak with a cuteness befitting her age, with brief, childish remarks, expressing her emotions honestly. She definitely wouldn't speak with such pointed words. I've warned you. Don't get the wrong idea. It's not like I'm saying this because I hate you. You don't need to tell somebody who's better off dead that they're in danger.
君は
Who are you?
誰だリカちゃんじゃ
You're not Rika-chan.
ない
Hmm? As soon as I accused her of not being Rika-chan, she let out a strange, quiet giggle. It was a laugh not befitting a child of her age. It was like she was possessed by something. Her change was just that total and complete. Was Rika-chan being attacked by some terrifying phenomenon? That occult idea came to mind without any sort of hesitation. Rika-chan is acting strange. Somebody help! Thinking that I'd yell that, I turned to where the mayor was. I immediately realized he was looking at us with a smile. That's right. To him, it looked like nothing more than me and Rika-chan fooling around. He didn't notice that there was something terrifying happening to her. Akasaka is such a coward. The girl had obviously grasped that I was afraid. Noticing that and calling me a coward, she laughed again. That cackling girl approaching me in such a strange manner while still laughing, lost her balance and fell flat on her face. Rika-chan fell down. If it was just a while before, I would have extended a hand to help her up without hesitation. But now, extending a hand to this ominous girl who looked like Rika-chan, but wasn't, required a bit more courage than I had at the moment. Me. The girl cried out thus. She then squirmed upright and dusted herself off. Afterwards, she looked around restlessly as a blank expression crept across her face. You've got to be kidding me! Was she making fun of me? That way of acting. It was as though, after being possessed by something, she had lost her memories of what happened.
冗談だろ
You're joking, right?
リカ
Rika-chan?
ちゃん
Me.
I don't know if Rika-chan had heard me or not. She just cried out like that, as if questioning herself.
Hey, mister! Rika-chama too! Tea's ready! There's some snacks too, so please come and have some!
An old lady wearing a smock was waving energetically from the entrance of the office. Hearing that there were snacks, Rika-chan's expression changed.
Yay!
A carefree smile. That was a familiar smile, the one that belonged to the embodiment of my ideal daughter. Any hint of the creepy girl that was just there, spouting sinister words, had vanished.
Come on, Rika-chama! Wash your hands first! There aren't any manju here for dirty hands. I'll wash them real good. Me.
Rika-chan responded with vigor, running off to the washing station that was along the side of the office. She stopped halfway, turning around to call to me.
If Akasaka doesn't hurry up, I'll eat his share of manju too. They're steaming fresh. People who don't wash their hands aren't allowed to eat any manju.
No matter how you looked at it, that was Rika-chan. Those words and the way she said them, no matter how you heard them, they were definitely Rika-chan's.
Come on now, mister! You're the adult here, so show her how it's done.
The old lady urged me to wash my hands. Without any resistance, I lined up beside Rika-chan at the wash station. Splish splash. I stared at Rika-chan, intent on washing her hands properly like she'd probably learned at school.
Me? Did I do something wrong?
Huh? By wrong, you mean...
How I'm washing my hands? I only got 4 gold stickers for it. I'm probably bad at washing my hands.
You're not doing anything wrong. If you're washing them that carefully, that's more than enough.
But it's not, Akasaka. If you don't use a brush and clean out the dirt underneath your fingernails, you won't get a gold sticker.
Rika-chan, you're very diligent. That's something to be proud of.
Nipa, I was praised by Akasaka.
No matter how you looked at it, it was Rika-chan. There was no trace of that girl from before. Exactly what was that sinister girl? Rika-chan, what was the meaning of what just happened now? Just now, you told me to go back to Tokyo, didn't you?
Did I say that?
I was at a loss for words. She didn't remember what that girl just now had said. Like I would ever believe something as occult as that could happen. Like I would ever believe that Rika-chan could be possessed by that strange girl and say those creepy things. Rika-chan, you definitely said that.
Me.
Her expression told me that, despite my saying so, she had no idea. She wasn't playing dumb. She actually didn't know. Exactly what was that just now? Just as Rika-chan had, I let a look of confusion creep across my face. The two of us, both looking like we had no idea what was going on, must have certainly been a humorous sight to behold. While partaking of tea and snacks, I was shown a propaganda film shot by the Guardians that highlighted their resistance efforts. Older folks talked passionately on how long and grueling the fight against the dam was, but they fell on deaf ears. I was transfixed by Rika-chan, who had heard these stories countless times before and was nodding off. Eventually, Rika-chan noticed I was staring at her, and smiled as she rubbed her eyes. That smile was Rika-chan's after all. There was no hint of that sinister shadow. After that, my unreasonable fear of Rika-chan lessened with the passing of time, but I could by no means forget what had happened. It eventually grew dark. The mayor said that they had prepared dinner, but I said I would come again tomorrow and took my leave. I had to return to the hotel and file my regular report with the section chief. I see. Well then, please come again tomorrow. If you phone, we'll send somebody to pick you up right away. I appreciate your hospitality. I'll probably come again and enjoy myself tomorrow. Yes, please do. It seems that Rika-chan has taken a pretty big liking to you.
Akasaka, are you coming again tomorrow? I finish after 5th period, so if you could come around 3 o'clock, that would make me happy.
Please come again. That pure smile urged me to do so. There wasn't a trace of that evil aura. Depending on what happened next, all that might end up as nothing other than my hallucination. Thinking about it logically, if the daughter of the Hudide household, one of the 3 families, had taken a liking to me, then this was a strong foothold for my investigation from here on out. It was like a free ticket for a reason to visit Hinamizawa. If only I could treat that little incident as a figment of my imagination, then having this girl who was the embodiment of my ideal daughter grow so attached to me wasn't bad either. I had successfully dove into the belly of the Onigafuji Guardians, and had the mayor as well as other important members of the Alliance welcome me with open arms. This is a great turn of events. However, I still felt uneasy. Getting back to the hotel, I forced down an almost a painfully cold beer until I could clear my mind. The shock from that incomprehensibly strange incident continued to torment me. New tips. And achievement unlocked, the terrifying shrine girl. Few new tips. Going smoothly. The sound of the car grew closer, followed by the sound of it braking as the engine cut out. Oops. At that moment, his up until now lackadaisical footsteps grew decisive as the man in the room dashed up to the wall beside the window and carefully peered outside. It was his comrade's car. Even so, he still didn't relax his guard. Eventually, the sound of footsteps approached the door. Thump, 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 thump. It was the passcode. I'm back! Open the door already! Ah, you must be tired. I'm opening it now. After the locks were undone and the door opened, a man appeared, his arms laden with swollen plastic grocery bags. The bags in his hands had 7 Smart written on them, with bread and milk cartons able to be glimpsed within. The contents of those bags were then spread out over a sheet on the floor. I bought some cup noodles, so go boil some water. What's the kid doing? Hmm? He's been sleeping the entire time. Thank God he's not causing any trouble. He did struggle a bit when he was about to shit himself. Don't let him crap his pants. It'd suck if he started smelling like an outhouse in here. Yeah, I know. Check the gag every now and then. We don't want it to get loose, so keep it tight. But not so tight that he stops breathing. I said, I know! Huh? Didn't I ask you to pick up another can of gas from the portable stove? We're out. You never asked, Jidget! Ah, seriously? Come on, work. Damn it! He rattled the portable stove as he struggled to get it to light. Seeing that, the man who went to buy supplies let out a deep sigh, and with a backwards glance at that sight, began to walk to the corner of the room. The kidnapped boy was sprawled out on a sheet that was spread out on the floor. Boy, you doing okay? Of course, the man didn't assume the kid was able to hear that question. That was because the boy's ears were plugged, with his eyes and ears thoroughly covered by packing tape. Also, his mouth was gagged with a thin, twisted-up towel. Because of that, the boy was unable to close his mouth properly, his cheeks sticky with his own saliva. Of course, that wasn't the only reason. Both his arms were tied tightly behind his back with a leather belt. You seem to be doing okay. At least you're not gonna die. If your grandpa wanted to play tough, we might have had to lop off an ear. It'd be great if we don't have to. If the main family says we do, though, tough luck. Can't even imagine what kinds of cruel things they have us do. The family says not one scratch on him, though, so it seems to be going well for the time being. The minister is discreetly withdrawing the dam project. The Hinamizawa Dam is indefinitely postponed. I wonder when we're letting the boy go. I just want to be done with this already. The main family seem to be gauging the timing. I don't know when it'll be, but probably soon. Isn't that great, kid? You'll be let go real soon. The men didn't know if their voices were heard by the boy. For him, there was nothing he could do but continue to sleep to escape his harsh reality. More importantly, what are we going to do about the gas? We can eat the cup noodles raw. We can't eat the cup noodles raw. If we're out of gas, say something. Jeez. why I like rainy days. The weather forecast had predicted that it wouldn't rain at all this entire week. It's not that I hate sunny days or anything. When every day is the same, unchanging sunny weather, however, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two. If it's simply clear skies for a week, a month, a year, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two. The weather specialist said that they had carefully scrutinized a large quantity of past data, so it wouldn't be so likely for the forecast to be wrong. I knew as much. But even then, there was occasionally a day where I was hoping that it would be wrong, as I stared up into the clear blue sky. Was I being mischievous in hoping so? I waited and waited, feeling almost suffocated by the boring blue sky undisturbed by a single cloud. If you could die from that suffocating feeling, then the population of Earth probably wouldn't have increased to this point. In other words, the only person who was being suffocated by this was me. And so, I welcomed the summer evenings where not even the weather forecast could predict a sudden shower. If I were to explain it like this, would you understand a bit more about how I feel? Let's say that tonight's dinner was going to be curry rice, but when you're called down to the dinner table, what was waiting for you was instead an eggplant and bell pepper stir-fry. This is just on your mother's whim, by the way. I would be delighted by such whimsy. I don't really like eggplants or bell peppers, but still I would be delighted. The fact that the pre-established routine of curry rice had been broken would be amusing. If tonight was repeated 100 times, and 100 times you had to eat curry rice, yet for just this one night, that was changed to an eggplant and bell pepper stir-fry. There's no way you couldn't enjoy that chance happening. I hate pre-established routines. I really hate when things are all decided beforehand. I have no love for boredom. I always get my hopes up that something today will be different from yesterday, no matter how trivial. It's been decided that this entire week starting today was going to be clear skies. The weather forecast decided upon it, so the god of weather must also feel obliged to do so. But who's to say that a rain cloud might not just show up one day on a whim? It's something that nobody can say for sure, but because that thought remains in this world, a creature such as myself can continue living without being suffocated. Tomorrow will probably be a hot and clear day. However, I'm the only one that knows that predetermined fate, even with but a slim 1% chance, sometimes changes. Hoping for that 1%, I hung upside-down weather charms on my sunlit eaves troughs. In the end, I spent my days waiting for those unexpected things in life to happen. I pondered why I was hoping for it. Why was I hoping for a rain cloud? The answer was simple. I've had my fill of clear skies. Then why was I hoping for a rain cloud? The answer was simple. The fact that it was going to be sunny tomorrow was boring. So why was I hoping for a rain cloud? In the end, it doesn't really matter whether it rains or shines tomorrow. Basically, it was just that the rain would water my heart, which was withered from boredom. That's why rather than a TV drama with the plots already been decided, I prefer to look up at the sky. Barley tea and black tea in a millstone. Your blood pressure has improved. For you to recover this quickly at your age, I'm rather impressed. At this rate, you'll still be kicking after a couple hundred more years, Oryo-san. The young doctor in his medical coat said that as he undid the blood pressure cuff from the arm of the old woman tucked away in her futon. You're a very good physician, Dr. Irie. If a persistent old fart like me doesn't hurry up and die, I'll just be in the way of you young folk. The old lady, Oryo, laughed faintly with a broad smile on her face. Then, turning towards the sliding door, she called out in a strong voice. Is Shimiko-san or Taiko-san there? Bring some tea for Dr. Irie. The sound of rushed footsteps from the hallway drew closer, until finally the door slid smoothly open. What it revealed was a young girl. It looked like the old lady's granddaughter. Shimiko-san already left for the day. Do you need something? Mion, make some barley tea for Dr. Irie. Okay, got it. Did you want some too, Granny? Or would black tea be better? Want lots of milk and sugar? I'll measure it out myself, so you don't have to put any in. Just bring the sugar jar and some milk when you bring the tea. Kite. The girl named Mion, after giving a rather uninterested response to her taskmaster of a grandmother, returned to the hallway. Pour the doctor's tea in the cups for the guests. And make sure you bring a coaster, too. Also, make sure to dry the outside of the glass, okay? Yeah. You're such a fussy pants. A tired voice wafted a reply from down the hallway. The apathetic tone of voice was far from unusual. The old lady let a wry smile slip across her face as she chided the girl. Jeez, that girl just won't learn. Nothing I ever scold her about sticks. No, Oryo-san. You don't have to say that. Mion-chan is doing her best in her own way, even though she's so young. Her mother was the same way. Couldn't teach her anything. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So her mother's mother must be exactly the same, no? The old lady burst out laughing. Her expression showed she hadn't taken the comment the wrong way. Dr. Irie, I'm sorry, but could you open the doors for me? It seems there's a nice cool breeze outside. The cool chirping of the Higurashi had at some point started leaking through the gap in the doorway. Irie stood up and opened the door a bit. A refreshing breeze pushed out the stale air that had built up in the room. It's gotten fairly hot during the day, but the evenings are still rather cool, aren't they? It was almost downright chilly last night. Yeah. Those types of mornings and evenings are another one of Hinamizawa's fine points. Irie replied with a smile as he returned to sit on the cushion beside the old lady. And then the two of them, for a little while, soaked in the voices of the Higurashi. I'm going to try and live to 100. Until the business with the dam is proper finished, I ain't kicking the bucket just yet. To get the government to withdraw a decision they've already made is a fairly difficult thing to do. The way this country does things is like turning a millstone. A heavy one at that. A millstone? Don't you know? A millstone! Irie quickly affirmed that of course he knew what the old lady was talking about, for he knew full well that Oryo didn't like having her stories interrupted. This millstone, see, can grind anything to a pulp. It's rather impressive. But you see, it doesn't turn that easy, because it's a rather heavy millstone. Lots of people have to work in unison to get it to even budge. It's that type of millstone. Irie pursed his lips, listening quietly to what she was saying. Eventually, Mion returned with some tea laid out on a tray. Seeing that Oryo was talking and in a good mood, she quietly knelt down and laid out the sets for the barley and black tea, careful not to interrupt. That's why, when it gets going, it's not that easy to stop. It takes the most effort to move it right before it starts turning. Everybody hates that, so everybody keeps pushing it along without rest. You're talking about friction, right? I get what you're saying. So in other words, if there's some sort of mistake and the millstone suddenly stops turning, to get it turning again takes a great deal of power, more or less. Certainly, to get a project that's been suspended going again takes quite a lot of work. It's a millstone that isn't easily stopped. But once it's stopped, it'll never turn again. It's that kind of millstone. It'd be nice if there was some way to get that millstone to stop, wouldn't it? When Irie responded with that, Mion and the old lady suddenly sunk into silence. Irie, instinctively thinking he had said something rude, searched in a small panic for the words to correct himself. But that silence wasn't the result of rude words. For what crept across Mion and the old lady's faces were contemptuous smiles. The atmosphere surrounding Irie suddenly froze, leaving him flabbergasted. Thinking that the scornful smiles creeping across both of their faces was the result of some mistake of his, he could only grow afraid. It hadn't been that long at all since he was enveloped by silence. However, unable to stand it, Irie could only let out a weak laugh. Irie's laugh eventually spread to Mion and the old lady. Not knowing exactly what they were laughing at, their laughter left a lingering chill. The only ones not laughing were the Higurashi, who continued their simple and unchanging chorus. Okay. That'll be it for today's stream then. I kind of want to make some food, so we'll be done there. Call it 2 chapters like usual. This is a shorter arc. I think there might actually only be 1 more of these streams. Definitely not more than 3, I think. I'll check quickly actually. Himatsubushi chapters. What do you mean there's only 2? I just did 2. I wish there was a thing that laid it out more clearly. Oh well. Actually, let me try checking the Steam page quickly. You're hungry too? Let me have a look at the achievements. Whoop, what happened there? Library. It looks like there might be 6, or maybe 4, depending on how this is laid out. I don't know. So yeah, I don't think it'll be more than 3. Anyway, that's enough of that. Thanks for watching. See you guys for the next one. Don't know when it will be. Depends on Josh's schedule, but it'll be sometime in next week. So yeah, thanks for coming. See you guys, and hopefully I'll see you next time. Goodbye.